Chapter 150. Sun Xinjing was a little confused. Was Zhang Liji's behavior like what Bai Jianmu said? In fact, the blueprint was stolen by Zhang Liji and Yi Xian. Therefore, Zhang Liji tried his best to excuse Yi Xian. The possibility that Bai Jianmu mentioned was not impossible, but it was very likely that this was really the case. Yi Xian knew the location of the blueprint. Perhaps Yi Xian did not want to steal the blueprint, but under Zhang Liji's instigation, Yi Xian stole the blueprint. After stealing the blueprint, Yi Xian was locked up as the person who stole the blueprint. As his accomplice, he naturally could not watch his accomplice be locked up. He would definitely find a way to help him out. At this moment, what Zhang Liji did was similar to that kind of thing. Zhang Liji did not know who stole the blueprint, but he insisted that the blueprint was definitely not taken by Yi Xian. What did this mean? Not only that, Zhang Liji did not suspect Yi Xian, who knew the location of the blueprint. What did this mean? At this moment, Sun Xinjing had a sudden realization after Bai Jianmu's reminder. Could it be that this matter was really related to Zhang Liji? Although Sun Xinjing did not want any of his disciples to steal the blueprint, if he knew who stole the blueprint, he would definitely not let this person go. No matter who this person was, Sun Xinjing would not let them go. Yi Xian was the best example. Yi Xian was Sun Xinjing's best disciple, and also his most trusted disciple. When he learned that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint, he did not let Yi Xian go. He did not hesitate to lock him up in the penitence pavilion. In Sun Xinjing's view, betraying the sect was absolutely unforgivable. No matter who this person was, Sun Xinjing would not forgive him. Looking at Zhang Liji in front of him, Sun Xinjing had a trace of suspicion in his heart. Zhang Liji's behavior today was too suspicious. He could not point out who stole the blueprint, but he insisted that Yi Xian was definitely not the person who stole it. What was his basis? Sun Xinjing did not know what Zhang Liji's basis was. How could he be so sure that Yi Xian was not the person who stole the blueprint? Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing looked at Zhang Liji and asked slowly, "What do you have to say?" Zhang Liji heard his master's question and saw his expression didn't his master's expression. He knew something was wrong. He quickly explained himself. He quickly explained, "Master, this has nothing to do with this matter. Just based on the fact that he knew where the blueprint was hiding." Is. Sun Xinjing heard this and snorted coldly. "Since that's the case, you say that Yi Xian is not the person who stole the blueprint. Then, tell me, who is the person who stole the blueprint?" At this point, Sun Xinjing's gaze sharpened and he said in a more serious tone, "You can say who stole the blueprint, but you can't frame your own fellow disciples. If you don't have any evidence, don't blame me for punishing you if you say it like that." After Zhang Liji heard Sun Xinjing's words, he must have been so scared that his forehead was covered in cold sweat. His heart was also beating a lot faster. At this point, Zhang Liji understood that his master was suspecting him. He was suspecting whether this matter had anything to do with him. Zhang Liji glanced at Bai Jianmu and saw that he was looking at him coldly. There was a trace of disdain at the corner of his mouth. It was as if he was mocking his own ignorance. Seeing this scene, Zhang Liji's heart burned with anger. He clearly had good intentions and wanted to find the person who stole the blueprint for his sect, but he didn't expect that things would develop to this point. In the end, he actually became the one who stole the blueprint. Looking at the sneering Bai Jianmu, Zhang Liji knew that if he didn't explain this matter clearly, he would definitely be in the same group as Yi Xian. When that time came, he would definitely be locked up in the Repentance Pavilion and accompany Yi Xian. However, although Zhang Liji knew where the problem was, he couldn't say it. Sun Xinjing had already said that if he said that Yi Xian wasn't the one who stole the blueprint, then he had to say who was the one who stole the blueprint. The most important thing was that Sun Xinjing had emphasized in the end that he was not allowed to frame his own fellow disciples. The meaning of Sun Xinjing's words made Zhang Liji feel very uncomfortable. Zhang Liji was certain that the person who stole the blueprint was definitely one of his fellow disciples. In fact, it wasn't just one person, but a few people working together to do this. His master didn't want him to frame his fellow disciples. He also wanted him to have real evidence before he could say who the person who stole the blueprint was. How should he answer this matter? If Zhang Liji dared to casually say someone, then Sun Xinjing would ask him if he had any real evidence. Zhang Liji naturally didn't have any real evidence because he didn't know who was the one who stole the blueprint. Eldest senior brother LV Wenkong didn't care about the matters of the South County branch. He only wanted to study the mechanism technique. Was there no doubt about such a person? Zhang Liji felt that something was wrong. It was precisely because eldest senior brother LV Wenkong didn't want to care about the trivial matters of the South County branch. He studied the mechanism technique every day. Could it be that the precious blueprint wasn't attractive to such a person? Zhang Liji felt that it was the exact opposite. That precious blueprint was definitely more attractive to LV Wenkong than any treasure. This meant that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong was very likely to steal the blueprint for his own research. Was it impossible for second senior brother Tang Jinan to steal the blueprint? Zhang Liji felt that it was impossible. Tang Jinan's talent in mechanism techniques was not high. It was precisely because his talent in mechanism techniques was not high that he lost the ability to compete for the position of a division leader. In order to improve his mechanism techniques, Tang Jinan might also steal the precious blueprint to improve his mechanism technique. When his mechanism techniques improved, he would naturally have a chance to compete for the position of a division leader. From the looks of it, second senior brother Tang Jinan might also steal the blueprint to improve his mechanism technique. It was even more likely that he would steal the blueprint because his talent was not as good as Yi Xian's. However, after obtaining the blueprint, his mechanism techniques would definitely improve by a lot. At that time, he could rely on his mechanism techniques to surpass Bai Jianmu and become the next successor of the division leader. It could be said that if he wanted to become a division leader, he had to steal the blueprint to improve his mechanism technique. Not only that, the possibility of him stealing the blueprint was very high. His mechanism techniques and Bai Jianmu's were already on par. If he used the effect of the blueprint to improve his mechanism techniques, he would definitely be able to surpass Bai Jianmu. At that time, he would definitely be able to become a division leader. Therefore, there were simply too many benefits to stealing the blueprint. At this moment, Zhang Liji was a little tempted. He even thought that if the blueprint was really in his hands, it would definitely be a good thing. Chapter 151. If fourth junior brother Yi Xian could steal the blueprint, there would naturally be many benefits. The key was that after he stole the blueprint, no one would suspect him. This was because if there were no accidents, he would be the next leader. No one would think that he had stolen the blueprint. Yi Xian could do this without arousing suspicion. It could even be said that he could use this to suppress his opponent. It could be said that if Yi Xian stole the blueprint, there would be too many benefits. In this case, it was not impossible for Yi Xian to steal the blueprint. As for fifth junior brother Bai Jianmu, if he stole the blueprint, there would be even more benefits. First of all, after he stole the blueprint, he could study the mechanism technique himself. On the other hand, he could frame Yi Xian for stealing the blueprint. With this matter, he could expel Yi Xian from the sect. Then, Bai Jianmu, who was the second most talented in the South County branch, would naturally become the next leader. Therefore, in order to become the leader, Bai Jianmu stole the blueprint and framed Yi Xian. He would expel Yi Xian from the sect and become the leader of the South County branch. At the thought of this, Zhang Liji even thought that even if Bai Jianmu did not steal the blueprint, but some other fellow disciple did, Bai Jianmu could still follow his original plan and suppress Yi Xian to achieve his goal of becoming a branch leader. In that case, Bai Jianmu might be the one who stole the blueprint, or he might not be the one who stole the blueprint. This was because, regardless of whether he stole the blueprint or not, he would still benefit from it. It was not impossible for sixth junior brother Lu Huarong to steal the blueprint. Lu Huarong was usually quiet and would not attract the attention of others. If he stole the blueprint, it could be said that he would not attract the attention of others. In fact, no one would even think that he was the one who stole the blueprint. This was because no one would think that Lu Huarong, who had always been quiet, would steal the blueprint. Logically speaking, Zhang Leji would not suspect a person like Lu Huarong. However, his performance today was too active. It was as if he had become a different person. He could not accept it. It was also because of these changes in Lu Huarong that Zhang Leji began to suspect him. He suspected that Lu Huarong had stolen those blueprints. However, Zhang Leji thought about it again. If the blueprint was really taken by Lu Huarong, then why was he so active today? Could it be that he wanted to attract his attention and make him suspect him? Zhang Leji felt that Lu Huarong couldn't be that stupid. Since he could do something like taking the blueprint, he definitely wouldn't do something so stupid. Therefore, the fact that Lu Huarong stole the blueprint was only a suspicion. There were too many suspicious points, and it was impossible to prove it. Lu Huarong could only say that there was a 50% chance that he would steal the blueprint. Seventh junior brother, Mei Guangji, had a good relationship with Yi Xian. However, could this be a reason for him to steal the blueprint? Zhang Leji felt that this was too far-fetched. Seventh junior brother, Mei Guangji, was young and very sincere. More importantly, even if he stole the blueprint, he could not become a branch leader. Regarding this point, Zhang Leji ruled him out. This was because even if seventh junior brother stole the blueprint, he could only improve his own skills. Moreover, he could not use this kind of skill easily. This was because if he used it, it would definitely be discovered by others. Therefore, the possibility of him stealing the blueprint was not high. Eighth junior sister, Li Xueyan, was too young and was a girl. Zhang Leji directly ruled her out. This was because even if eighth junior sister stole the blueprint, the result would be the same as seventh junior brother. Zhang Leji quickly thought about the possibility of his seniors and juniors stealing the blueprint. In the end, he was shocked to find out. Other than seventh junior brother and eighth junior sister, the rest of them could have stolen the blueprint. This was because after they obtained the blueprint, it would bring them benefit. After stealing the blueprint, who would benefit the most? Of course, it would be the fifth junior brother, Bai Jianmu. He would benefit the most. He could use this opportunity to push Yi Xian out and become the next leader's successor. However, Zhang Leji carefully thought about Bai Jianmu's suspicions. He was shocked to find that if Bai Jianmu did not steal the blueprint, it would be more beneficial to him. This was because as long as Bai Jianmu stole the blueprint, no matter how long it took, it would be discovered by others. Even if he became the branch leader, it would definitely not be good for his reputation. Therefore, if it was someone else who had stolen the blueprints, Bai Jianmu would be able to make use of this opportunity to gain the greatest benefit. Not only that, he wouldn't have to bear the crime of stealing the blueprints and would naturally become the next branch leader's successor. In this way, the possibility of Bai Jianmu stealing the blueprint would be the smallest. Thinking of this, Zhang Leji turned his head and looked at Bai Jianmu. He was hesitant in his heart. He wondered if Bai Jianmu was the one who did this, or Bai Jianmu said that someone else was the one who did it. Thinking of this, Zhang Leji turned his head and looked at Lu Huarong. He guessed that Bai Jianmu might have instigated Lu Huarong to steal the blueprint. If that was the case, then this matter would be perfect. Lu Huarong could improve his skills, and Bai Jianmu could use this to achieve his own goals. Wouldn't this be killing two birds with one stone? Thinking of this, Zhang Leji felt that his guess was right. It should not be far from the actual situation. However, Zhang Leji thought about it again. Tang Jinan was still here. What role did Tang Jinan play in this? Zhang Leji glanced at Tang Jinan and saw him looking at him with a smile. When Tang Jinan saw Zhang Leji looking at him, Tang Jinan even smiled and nodded at him. Seeing this scene, Zhang Leji felt a headache. Tang Jinan, Bai Jinmu, and Lu Huarong. Looking at their performance today, they must have already joined forces. If Bai Jinmu instigated Lu Huarong to steal the blueprint, then after Lu Huarong stole the blueprint, Bai Jinmu would start to push this matter to Yi Xian and use this as an excuse to expel Yi Xian from the sect. However, what benefits could Tang Jinan obtain? If he couldn't obtain any benefits, why would he join Bai Jinmu's team? Zhang Leji felt that Tang Jinan must have obtained some benefit. Otherwise, he wouldn't join Bai Jinmu's team. This was also what Zhang Leji was suspicious about. What benefits could Tang Jinan obtain from this? Regarding this point, Zhang Leji still couldn't figure out what benefits Tang Jinan would obtain. Or rather, Zhang Leji's heart suddenly moved. Could it be that Tang Jinan was the one who stole the blueprint? Bai Jinmu instigated Tang Jinan to steal the blueprint and then used it to threaten Tang Jinan, forcing Tang Jinan to join his camp to achieve his goal of becoming the leader. Chapter 152. Looking at the smiling Tang Jinan, Zhang Leji didn't know if he was right, but he could only think this way. This was because if one didn't think about it carefully, they wouldn't feel anything. However, when one thought about it carefully, one would find that this matter was very strange. Everyone was a suspect, and there was a possibility that they would steal the blueprint. In fact, it could even be said that this included himself. Zhang Leji hadn't thought about this problem before. Now that he thought about it, it really made sense. If he stole the blueprint, there would be too many benefits. He could frame Yi Xian or Bai Jinmu at will. As long as the two of them were the scapegoats, then he would definitely be able to become the next branch master's successor. Thinking of this, Zhang Leji's heart was filled with vigilance. He knew that since he could think of this, Bai Jinmu should have thought of it as well. Not only that, his master should have thought of it as well. If he stole the blueprint, it would bring him great benefit. Seeing that Zhang Leji didn't answer his question for a long time, Sun Xinjing was a little impatient. He was already in a bad mood. When he thought of his own things being stolen by his own disciples, no one would be in a good mood at this moment. The reason why Sun Xinjing accepted them as his disciples was because he trusted them. However, this kind of trust was exchanged for this kind of result. No matter who it was, they wouldn't be happy about it. Looking at Zhang Leji in front of him, Sun Xinjing was also suspicious. Zhang Leji hadn't answered his question for a long time, and his eyes were flickering. With a glance, he knew that Zhang Leji was thinking about something. Not only that, Zhang Leji's gaze was also looking at his fellow disciples. Seeing this scene, Sun Xinjing was even more suspicious. He guessed that Zhang Leji wanted to frame someone and make them take the blame. Thinking of this possibility, Sun Xinjing couldn't bear it anymore. He slammed the table and said angrily, "I asked you a question. Why aren't you answering?" Zhang Leji, who was deep in thought with his head lowered, was startled by the sound of his master slamming the table. He suddenly reacted and hurriedly cupped his hands towards Sun Xinjing. "Master, this disciple is thinking about the whole story of this matter, and who would do such a thing." After hearing Zhang Leji's words, Sun Xinjing snorted coldly. "Then what did you think of? Hurry up and tell me." After Zhang Leji heard Sun Xinjing's words, he was stunned at first. He pondered in his heart how he should answer his master's question. What he thought just now was just a guess. He didn't have any evidence to prove that someone stole it. How should he answer? Sun Xinjing had already said that he could not say anything without solid evidence. Could it be that he was just going to keep quiet like this? Zhang Leji knew that if I didn't say anything now, once Master announced the end, Yi Xian probably wouldn't have another chance. After today, no one would talk about this matter anymore. They would all be sure that Yi Xian stole the blueprint. Not only that, would Yi Xian be forced to hand over the blueprint? If the blueprint was really taken by Yi Xian, then he could hand it over. But if it wasn't stolen by Yi Xian, then where would Yi Xian get the blueprint from? Since they had already determined that Yi Xian stole the blueprint and Yi Xian didn't hand it over, then Zhang Liji was certain that Yi Xian's fate would be very tragic. When that happened, it would be great if he could be expelled from the sect. The worst thing would be that he would be locked up for the rest of his life. Or rather, he would be locked up until he handed over the blueprint. The key point was, if the blueprint wasn't stolen by Yi Xian, then where would he get it from? Thinking about the outcome of this matter, Zhang Liji couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. If Yi Xian were to encounter such a thing in the end, his fate would be extremely tragic. Thinking about Yi Xian's fate, Zhang Liji thought about himself. If this matter continued, he was afraid that he would follow in Yi Xian's footsteps. Thinking of this, Zhang Liji knew that he couldn't hold back anymore. If he hesitated, not only would he not be able to help Yi Xian, but he would also be implicated. He had to tell everyone about this matter. Regardless of whether there was evidence or not, he had to let Master know that everyone could have stolen the blueprint, not just Yi Xian. Thinking of this, Zhang Liji wiped the cold sweat on his forehead, cupped his hands towards Sun Xinjing, and said respectfully, "Master, your disciple has thought about it carefully and analyzed the possibilities of my fellow disciples doing this. Would you be willing to listen?" Sun Xinjing was stunned when he heard this. Then, he sneered in his heart. He guessed that Zhang Liji was still trying to quibble. Based on what Bai Jianmu said just now, Sun Xinjing felt that Zhang Liji was very likely to have something to do with this matter. If Zhang Liji stole the blueprint, then no matter what he did, it would be beneficial to him. If Yi Xian was in cahoots with him, then Yi Xian would be locked up. If Zhang Liji was framing Bai Jianmu as the person who stole the blueprint, then among the remaining disciples, Sun Xinjing was certain that Zhang Liji would become the leader. This was because Zhang Liji's talent in mechanics was second only to Yi Xian and Bai Jianmu. It could even be said that Zhang Liji's mechanics had surpassed Bai Jianmu in some aspects. If Yi Xian and Bai Jianmu were both implicated by the blueprint, then the person who benefited the most would naturally be Zhang Liji. After Zhang Liji stole the blueprint, he could cultivate the knowledge on the blueprint and improve his mechanism skills. This was only one of the benefits. The other benefit was that he could 100% become the leader of the South County branch. Without the threat of Yi Xian and Bai Jianmu, Zhang Liji was the best candidate for the leader among the remaining disciples. This meant that Zhang Liji was very likely to steal the blueprint. This was also the reason why Sun Xinjing suspected Zhang Liji. As for Bai Jianmu, Sun Xinjing also suspected that Bai Jianmu stole the blueprint and framed Yi Xian. This possibility was not impossible. Sun Xinjing also thought that if Bai Jianmu stole the blueprint, then he would benefit even more than Zhang Liji. This was because Bai Jianmu's talent in mechanics was second only to Yi Xian. Among Sun Xinjing's many disciples, he was ranked second. Since Yi Xian had been locked up, Bai Jianmu naturally became the next leader of the branch. Ever since Yi Xian was locked up, Sun Xinjing had also considered this problem. His original plan was to pass the position of leader to Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian stole the blueprint and disrupted Sun Xinjing's plan. Since Yi Xian could no longer be the successor, then he could only choose another person. Among all the disciples, Bai Jianmu was undoubtedly the best candidate. Chapter 153. Sun Xinjing looked at Bai Jianmu and had some doubts in his heart. If Yi Xian could not become the next leader of the South County branch, then Bai Jianmu and Zhang Liji would become the candidates for the next leader. Knowing this situation, would Bai Jianmu choose to steal the blueprint and frame Yi Xian? Then, he would take this opportunity to achieve his goal. Sun Xinjing looked at Zhang Liji and then at Bai Jianmu. He knew in his heart that if there were no accidents, after he left the South County branch, one of these two people would become the leader of the South County branch. However, what exactly was going on with the blueprint? Until now, Sun Xinjing was also a little puzzled. Would Yi Xian steal the blueprint? Would Zhang Liji steal the blueprint? Would Bai Jianmu steal the blueprint? Would others steal the blueprint? This series of things gave Sun Xinjing a headache. What was the truth about the blueprint? The reason why Yi Xian knew the location of the blueprint was because Sun Xinjing had once brought him to the place where the blueprint was placed. At that time, Sun Xinjing trusted Yi Xian very much, which was why he brought him to the place where the blueprint was placed. Sun Xinjing really wanted to groom Yi Xian as the next successor and let him become the leader of the South County branch. However, when he thought of this, Sun Xinjing felt a wave of anger in his heart. Yi Xian betrayed him and stole his blueprint. Sun Xinjing would never forgive him for this. No matter who it was, Sun Xinjing would never forgive them for betraying him. It was precisely because of this that Yi Xian was locked up in the Repentance Pavilion. However, Zhang Liji said that Yi Xian was not the one who stole the blueprint. He was framed. Sun Xinjing was a little skeptical about what Zhang Liji said. This was because only Yi Xian knew where the blueprint was placed. The place where the blueprint was placed did not mean that one only needed to know the location, but there was a mechanism there. Even if one found the location where the blueprint was placed, if one did not know the way to activate the mechanism, they could only stand outside and not enter. It was precisely because of this reason that Sun Xinjing suspected that Yi Xian was the one who did it. Although Yi Xian was a good person, Sun Xinjing felt that he did not dare to say anything in front of that blueprint. In Sun Xinjing's eyes, that blueprint was extremely precious. Even if all the treasures in the world were combined, they would not be able to compare to a corner of this blueprint. His master had spent half of his life studying. It was not a trivial matter. It was also because of this blueprint that Sun Xinjing had made up his mind to look for his master to research mechanical techniques together. However, such a precious thing had actually disappeared in front of his eyes. How could this not make Sun Xinjing extremely angry? Yi Xian, Zhang Liji, and Bai Jianmu in front of him, these three people should be the most suspicious in Sun Xinjing's eyes. Both Zhang Liji and Bai Jianmu might use this matter to achieve their goals. In other words, after this matter happened, they would be able to obtain the greatest benefit. Sun Xinjing saw this very clearly. As for the others, Sun Xinjing felt that they were less suspicious. This was because regardless of whether the blueprint was lost or not, they would not obtain the greatest benefit. In the entire South County branch, the greatest benefit was, of course, the position of the branch leader. However, after the blueprint was lost, only Zhang Liji and Bai Jianmu would benefit from it. His eldest disciple, LV Wenkong, was the same as him. He wanted to study the mechanism technique and did not have any thoughts about the position of the branch leader. Therefore, Sun Xinjing did not suspect his eldest disciple, LV Wenkong, at all. This was because doing so would not benefit him at all. Even if his second disciple, Tang Jianan, lost the blueprint, it did not seem to have anything to do with him. Tang Jianan's talent was still a little inferior among his fellow disciples. In terms of mechanism technique, his skills were not very high. Even if such a person stole the blueprint, he would not obtain the greatest benefit. Just as Sun Xinjing thought of this, Zhang Liji had already quarreled with him again. He cupped his fists and bowed. "Master, if you don't blame me, then I will analyze the whole matter." When Sun Xinjing heard this, he thought for a moment before nodding his head. "All right, go ahead." At this point, Sun Xinjing glanced around and said loudly, "Everyone is here. Listen to what he has to say and think about who did this." When everyone heard this, they all nodded in agreement. Zhang Liji looked at everyone's expression again before he said slowly. Since that's the case, I will analyze it one by one. At this point, Zhang Liji turned to look at his eldest senior brother, LV Wenkang, and cupped his fists before he said slowly. Now, let's talk about our eldest senior brother. At this point, Zhang Liji's tone became more serious. He looked at his eldest senior brother, LV Wenkang, and saw that after hearing this, LV Wenkang's expression changed obviously. He could not help but narrow his eyes and look over. Seeing this, Zhang Liji sighed in his heart. He knew that no matter what he said, he would eventually offend his eldest senior brother. However, if he did not say it, according to his judgment just now, he would not have the chance to say it in the future even if he wanted to. This was because after today, if this matter was not resolved, Bai Jianmu would definitely get rid of him. At that time, even if he wanted to say something, he would not have the chance. Thinking of this, Yi Xian looked apologetically at his eldest senior brother, LV Wenkang, and said, "Eldest senior brother, I'm sorry. I didn't mean anything else. I just wanted to analyze the matter between us. Please don't blame me." After hearing Zhang Liji's words, LV Wenkang nodded and said with a smile, "Third junior brother, feel free to say it. I won't blame you. Don't worry, just say it and let everyone hear it. I, LV Wenkang, will definitely not do anything to let Master down." At this point, LV Wenkang cupped his fists and bowed to his master, Sun Xinjing. Seeing this, Sun Xinjing smiled and nodded. He was very confident in his eldest disciple, LV Wenkang. After all, his eldest senior brother had no intention of competing for the position of a division leader. He was focused on researching mechanisms. How could such a person do such a bad thing? Seeing the smile on his master's face, LV Wenkang nodded in satisfaction. He turned to look at Zhang Liji and said with a smile, "Third junior brother, then you can start. Don't worry, just say it. Master and I won't blame you." Seeing the smile on LV Wenkang's face, Zhang Liji's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. He knew that his eldest senior brother Li Wenkang was smiling right now, but when he heard his analysis, his smile would probably disappear completely. Chapter 154. Hearing Zhang Liji say that he wanted to analyze the possibility of his fellow disciples doing this, a sneer appeared on Bai Jianmu's face. Bai Jianmu knew that as long as Zhang Liji said it, he would offend everyone. At that time, Zhang Liji would have no way out. Unless he could find the real person who stole the blueprint, it would be very difficult for Zhang Liji to stay in the South County branch. After all, what he was going to say later would offend all his fellow disciples. As for finding the real person who stole the blueprint, Bai Jianmu only sneered. It was just a dream. Next, he was going to watch a good show. Zhang Liji also heard Bai Jianmu's cold snort and knew what he was thinking. However, at this time, he had no way out. He could only continue. Thinking of this, Zhang Liji once again cupped his fists at his eldest senior brother LV Wenkang and said loudly, "Eldest senior brother, I won't stand on ceremony then." LV Wenkang heard this and waved his hand with a smile. "You're welcome. Hurry up and say it. Everyone is waiting anxiously." Hearing this, Zhang Liji nodded and looked at the eldest senior brother apologetically. Then, he slowly said, "What we're talking about today is about the blueprint. Master's blueprint is missing, and the person who stole the blueprint must be one of us. I don't think anyone has any doubts about this, right?" Speaking of this, Zhang Liji paused for a moment before continuing. "Since it was one of us who stole it, of course, Yi Xian, who knows the location of the blueprint, is definitely the most suspicious. Everyone won't doubt this, right?" Speaking of this, Zhang Liji paused and looked around. He looked at the expressions of his fellow disciples before continuing. "However, just because Yi Xian knows the location of the blueprint, I feel that it's unfair to assume that he stole the blueprint. That's why I gathered everyone here today to discuss this matter. First, let's talk about what benefits you will get if the blueprint is obtained by everyone. As you know, no one will do something without benefit. It's the same for blueprints. Only those who need the blueprint will treat it as a treasure. As for those who don't need the blueprint, even if you give it to them, they probably won't want it. That's why I want to talk about what benefits you will get after obtaining this blueprint. At this point, Zhang Liji paused and turned to look at eldest senior brother LV Wenkang. He nodded apologetically before he continued. First, let's talk about eldest senior brother. We all know that he doesn't have any thoughts about the position of the branch leader. What he likes the most is to quietly study mechanism techniques every day. It can be said that no one can compare to his perseverance in studying mechanism technique. When it comes to studying mechanism technique, in order to study, he's to study to understand a matter to pay, he would pay any price. He would to study to understand something, he would pay any price. Would such a person would steal a blueprint? Study to LTO2s. To the other senior brother. Was to last to senior brother. Li Shuyan didn't expect Zhang Liji to ask her such a question. She was stunned for a moment before replying softly. No, I don't think eldest senior brother would steal a blueprint. After hearing Li Shuyan's reply, Zhang Liji nodded and continued. Logically speaking, someone like eldest senior brother who studies mechanism techniques wholeheartedly wouldn't steal something. Speaking of this, Zhang Liji paused for a moment. He looked around before continuing. However, what we lost is a blueprint. It's an extremely precious blueprint. I think everyone knows the value of this blueprint. It can be said that no matter who it is, as long as someone who understands mechanism techniques obtains this blueprint, their skill level in mechanism techniques will increase greatly. This blueprint might be given to someone who doesn't know anything about mechanisms, and that person wouldn't want it. However, as long as someone knows about mechanisms, they would treat it as a treasure. It can even be said that the deeper one's understanding of mechanisms, the more they would understand the value of this blueprint. Speaking up to this point, Zhang Liji turned his head to look at eldest senior brother LV Wenkang and asked with a smile, Eldest senior brother, am I right? The more you study mechanisms, the more you understand the value of this blueprint. LV Wenkang nodded. That's true. Those who don't understand mechanism techniques won't be able to understand the blueprint easily. How would they know the value of this blueprint? After hearing LV Wenkang's reply, Zhang Liji smiled and said, Therefore, to those who don't understand mechanism techniques, this blueprint is just a piece of scrap paper. However, in eldest senior brother's eyes, it's the best treasure in the world. Am I right, eldest senior brother? After hearing Zhang Liji's question, LV Wenkang nodded. Just as he was about to answer, his expression suddenly changed. Then, he asked loudly, Third junior brother, are you doubting me? After hearing LV Wenkang's question, Zhang Liji shook his head and replied, Eldest senior brother, there's no doubt now. There's only one person who will benefit from it. Speaking of this, Zhang Liji paused for a while before continuing, Eldest senior brother knows the value of this blueprint. Furthermore, eldest senior brother has been studying mechanism techniques wholeheartedly. I think this blueprint is probably the best treasure in the world in eldest senior brother's eyes. If eldest senior brother wants to steal this blueprint to study mechanism techniques, do you think it's possible for us to do it? After hearing Zhang Liji's words, LV Wenkang was instantly enraged. He pointed at Zhang Liji and said angrily, Even if I like studying mechanism techniques, I still understand the principle of respecting my teacher. Before master announces the blueprint, I can't steal it privately. Speaking of this, LV Wenkang took a few deep breaths to calm his agitated mood before continuing. Third junior brother, I, LV Wenkang, am not that kind of person. I'm not the kind of person who would steal master's blueprint. Speaking of this, LV Wenkang turned to look at Sun Xinjing and cupped his fist. Master, this matter definitely has nothing to do with me. Master, please investigate thoroughly. After hearing Zhang Leji's words, Sun Xinjing's heart skipped a beat. According to Zhang Leji's words, LV Wenkang might really steal the blueprint. In order to study mechanism techniques, LV Wenkang had even given up the position of a branch leader. He had paid such a huge price just to study mechanism techniques wholeheartedly. In LV Wenkang's eyes, this blueprint was simply a priceless treasure. This was something that Sun Xinjing believed without a doubt. This was because he was also the kind of person who liked to study mechanism technique. Sun Xinjing studied the blueprint carefully after his master sent it to him, and after a period of study. Chapter 155. After Fang Tianji sent the blueprint over, Sun Xinjing treated it like a treasure. Sun Xinjing wondered if he would steal it if he knew that someone else had it. Sun Xinjing's heart sank when he thought of this possibility. This was a very possible matter. LV Wenkang, who was wholeheartedly researching mechanism techniques, in order to improve his mechanism techniques, would steal this blueprint. It was also possible. After all, it could be said that LV Wenkang had given up everything for the sake of his skills. LV Wenkang did not want to be a branch leader. He did not even have a wife or children. He did not think about these things. He only had the skills in his heart. Would such a person be tempted by such a precious blueprint? To be honest, Sun Xinjing was a little suspicious. After Zhang Leji's reminder, he doubted that Li Wenkang would do such a thing. After hearing LV Wenkang's explanation, Sun Xinjing did not say anything. Instead, he turned to look at Zhang Leji. When Zhang Leji saw his master looking over, he sighed and slowly said, "Master, eldest senior brother has given up everything for the mechanical engineering technique. It can be said that as long as he can improve his mechanical engineering technique, I think eldest senior brother will do anything. Therefore, eldest senior brother will very likely steal this blueprint." LV Wenkang flew into a rage after hearing Zhang Leji's word. He took 2 steps forward and walked to Zhang Leji's side. He reached out and grabbed Zhang Leji. "Third junior brother, we have no grudges. Why do you want to frame me? Tell me clearly today why you want to frame me." Zhang Leji shook his head after hearing LV Wenkang's accusation. He smiled bitterly and said, "Eldest senior brother, I am not framing you. This is just my analysis." Zhang Leji paused for a moment, looked at LV Wenkang, and smiled bitterly before continuing. "Senior brother, please forgive me for my rudeness. If eldest senior brother really stole that blueprint, would it be of help to your mechanical arts? Would it immediately improve your mechanical arts?" After LV Wenkang heard Zhang Leji's question, he was stunned at first, then he let go of Zhang Leji and nodded sadly. Then, he shouted again, "Brother Zhang Leji. But even so, I can't possibly steal Master's blueprints. Third junior brother, please believe me. I really can't steal Master's blueprints. I, LV Wenkang, would never do such a thing." At this point, LV Wenkang's gaze once again turned to Sun Xinjing as he shouted, "Master, this matter really wasn't done by this disciple. Master, please investigate thoroughly." When Sun Xinjing heard this, he waved his hand and said in a low voice, "Step aside first. Let's listen to what others have to say first." After LV Wenkang heard Sun Xinjing's words, the expression on his face suddenly froze. He didn't dare to say what he wanted to say next. He could only stand aside with his head lowered. Seeing LV Wenkang stand aside, Sun Xinjing then turned to the rest of the disciples and asked, "What do you guys think?" After hearing Sun Xinjing's words, everyone was stunned. Then, they shook their heads. Seeing this scene, Sun Xinjing was somewhat annoyed. He pointed his finger at Tang Jianan and loudly said, "You are the second senior brother. You should be the first to speak. What is your opinion on this matter?" After being called out by his master, Tang Jianan was stunned. He looked at Sun Xinjing and didn't know what to do. He really didn't expect things to develop to this stage. He thought that the person he was targeting today was only Zhang Leji. He didn't expect his master to ask him to express his opinion on LV Wenkang. What should he say? Should he say that LV Wenkang could have stolen the blueprint? Or should he say that LV Wenkang couldn't have stolen the blueprint? If he said that LV Wenkang had stolen the blueprint, he would offend him directly. This was different from the original plan. However, if he said that LV Wenkang couldn't have stolen the blueprint, Tang Jianan probably wouldn't believe it himself. LV Wenkang had given up everything in order to study the mechanism technique. Tang Jianan knew this very well. If LV Wenkang had stolen the blueprint in order to study the mechanism technique, logically speaking, with LV Wenkang's concentration on the mechanism technique, this was definitely possible. After all, LV Wenkang could give up everything for the mechanism technique. It could be said that the mechanism technique was his only thing. Although Yi Xian was said to be the best in the mechanism technique among the next generation of disciples, he was still a distance away from LV Wenkang. In the South County branch, other than his master, Sun Xinjing, no one could compare to LV Wenkang's mechanism technique. Not only that, some people even suspected that LV Wenkang's mechanism technique had already surpassed his master, Sun Xinjing. After all, Sun Xinjing was the branch master of the South County branch. He had wasted too much of his time dealing with trivial matters. On the other hand, LV Wenkang was different. He did not need to deal with the matters of the South County branch, nor did he need to consider the problems of his wife and children. In fact, he only took in one disciple, and this only disciple was only there to be his assistant. Therefore, the time LV Wenkang spent studying the mechanism technique far exceeded that of his master, Sun Xinjing. It was very possible that his mechanism technique had already surpassed his master's. At their level, it could be said that they had reached a kind of bottleneck. It was already very difficult for them to increase their strength further. It was even more difficult to break through this bottleneck by themselves. At this time, if they had this blueprint, then the situation would immediately be different. Under the guidance of this blueprint, the bottleneck that was difficult to break through would soon be broken through and they would enter the next stage. To a mechanism master, this kind of attraction was simply irresistible. After hearing Zhang Leji's words, even Tang Jianan believed it. He believed that LV Wenkang had indeed stolen the blueprint. In order to break through his bottleneck, LV Wenkang had stolen this blueprint to achieve his goal. This kind of guess was very likely to happen. Under such circumstances, if Tang Jianan said that LV Wenkang had not stolen the blueprint, even he himself would not believe it. Not only that, if Tang Jianan said that LV Wenkang had not stolen the blueprint, his master would definitely think that there was something wrong with it. If he could not see such an obvious thing, his second senior brother would be too retarded. However, if LV Wenkang had stolen the blueprint, then wouldn't today's plan be ruined? The original plan was to anger Zhang Leji and then wait for Zhang Leji to get angry. Then, when Zhang Leji was angry, he would take the opportunity to drag him down so that he would not be able to drag this matter out. However, a problem appeared. If LV Wenkang might have stolen the blueprint, then wouldn't the previous plan be in vain? Zhang Leji could easily get rid of the implication of this matter and jump out of the picture. He would become an outsider. It would not be easy to implicate him in this matter again. Chapter 156. This kind of result was not what Tang Jianan wanted. What they wanted was to make Zhang Leji angry, and then use this opportunity to implicate Zhang Leji. However, the situation had changed, and Tang Jianan was caught off guard. In the end, the eldest senior brother, LV Wenkang, who was the least suspected, was also suspected. Not only that, this suspicion was so convincing. Tang Jianan turned to look at his fellow apprentices and found that they all had a look of doubt in their eyes. Tang Jianan knew that Zhang Liji's words had worked. Now, everyone believed that LV Wenkang was the one who stole the blueprint. That was because LV Wenkang did have the motive and reason to steal the blueprint. In the South County branch, eldest senior brother LV Wenkang did not want to fight for the position of the branch leader. Everyone knew about this very well. They also admired eldest senior brother LV Wenkang's character. They also admired him for giving up everything in order to study the mechanism technique. However, at this moment, this admirable thing had turned into evidence. LV Wenkang could give up everything in order to learn more advanced mechanism technique. This meant that in his eyes, only mechanism techniques were what he wanted the most. If that was the case, wouldn't that mean that this blueprint was also the thing he wanted the most? For the sake of mechanism techniques, the eldest senior brother, LV Wenkang, could give up everything. In other words, in order to learn mechanism techniques, the eldest senior brother, LV Wenkang, could do anything, including stealing the blueprint. Everyone knew that as long as LV Wenkang obtained the blueprint, his mechanism techniques would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. No one doubted this. On one hand, the eldest senior brother, LV Wenkang, liked to study mechanism technique. On the other hand, he did have extraordinary talent in this aspect. Once the eldest senior brother, LV Wenkang, obtained this blueprint, he would break through his bottleneck in mechanism techniques in a short period of time and reach a new height. And this result was exactly what LV Wenkang wanted. It was something that he had been pursuing for his entire life. Everyone looked at eldest senior brother LV Wenkang. At this moment, LV Wenkang's expression of righteous indignation seemed to be an act in everyone's eyes. All of this was done by him. He had pretended to feel that way so that everyone would believe that he hadn't stolen the blueprint. Seeing this, Tang Jianan could only sigh. Things had developed to this point. If he said that it was impossible for LV Wenkang to steal the blueprint, then he would be suspected in his master's eyes. Tang Jianan wanted to say that LV Wenkang was a suspect, but he was unwilling to do so. Originally, the situation in the hall was within expectations. However, in just a short period of time, a shocking change had occurred. Not only did Zhang Liji quickly get rid of his suspicions, but he also ruined their plan. At this point, Tang Jianan had no other choice. He turned his head to look at Bai Jianmu, wanting to see what he meant. But when he turned his head to look at Bai Jianmu, he was disappointed. Bai Jianmu was looking at the ground with his head lowered. He had no intention of speaking. Helpless, Tang Jianan turned his gaze to Lu Huarong. Lu Huarong was also looking at Tang Jianan, but his eyes were flickering. It seemed that he was feeling extremely conflicted. Looking at everything in the hall, Tang Jianan sighed inwardly. He knew that no matter how much he calculated, he was still lacking this step. Now that things had come to this, he could only follow Zhang Liji's words. Thinking of this, Tang Jianan glanced at eldest senior brother LV Wenkang again. Then, he cupped his hands and said apologetically, "Eldest senior brother, I'm sorry." When Sun Xinjing asked Tang Jianan, LV Wenkang kept staring at him. LV Wenkang was very nervous. He wanted to hear what Tang Jianan had to say. At this point, LV Wenkang also understood that it was useless for him to say anything now. Zhang Liji's words made sense. Even LV Wenkang himself believed that Zhang Liji's words made sense. His engineering skills had indeed reached a bottleneck. If he wanted to break through this bottleneck, he would need a long time to slowly research it on his own. However, it was different with the blueprint. LV Wenkang was confident that he could break through this bottleneck in a short period of time and reach a new height. All this proved that LV Wenkang could indeed steal the blueprint. In order to break through this bottleneck, he would definitely steal this blueprint. LV Wenkang knew that it was useless to say anything now. He could only wait and see what everyone else said. If everyone said that he stole the blueprint, then it would be useless even if he said that he didn't steal the blueprint. However, if everyone present except Zhang Leji said that he was suspected of stealing the blueprint and the others said that he was not, then it would be useless to rely on Zhang Leji alone to say that he was suspected. Therefore, LV Wenkang stared at Tang Jinan closely. He wanted to see what Tang Jinan would say. This was very important. If Tang Jinan also said that he was suspected, then it would be very important. If Zhang Leji said that he was suspected, then it represented his own opinion. In fact, it wasn't very important. However, if the second person to speak, Tang Jinan, said that he was suspected, then it would form a situation where two people suspected him. LV Wenkang knew that after Tang Jinan answered, his master would still ask the rest. He would only make the final judgment after everyone was questioned. At this moment, once Tang Jinan said that he was suspected, it would definitely have a very bad impact. Among the people who followed, even those who didn't dare to speak would also say that he was suspected. For example, 7th junior brother Mei Guangji and 8th junior sister Li Shuyan. They didn't speak much. If they were to speak up for someone, coupled with the fact that he was indeed suspected, they wouldn't make much of a choice. They would say that he was suspected like everyone else. Therefore, Tang Jinan's answer was very important. In LV Wenkang's opinion, it was even more important than Zhang Leji's words because Tang Jinan's answer would directly affect the thoughts of the people who answered. Looking at Tang Jinan hesitating there, LV Wenkang's heart was almost in his throat. He kept praying in his heart, hoping that Tang Jinan would say that he wasn't suspected. Although he knew that the possibility was very small, LV Wenkang had no other choice. He couldn't do anything except pray. Seeing Tang Jinan's gaze turn to him, LV Wenkang's heart became more nervous. Looking at Tang Jinan who wanted to say something but stopped, LV Wenkang wanted to go forward and grab him to ask what he was thinking. Or, he wanted him to not suspect him and say that he couldn't steal the blueprint. Of course, all of this was LV Wenkang's imagination. The result of the matter depended on Tang Jinan's words. Chapter 157. While LV Wenkang was waiting anxiously, Tang Jinan finally turned his head and said apologetically, "Eldest senior brother, I'm sorry." Before Tang Jinan could finish his sentence, LV Wenkang, who had been waiting anxiously, suddenly widened his eyes and stared at Tang Jinan in disbelief. "Second junior brother, do you suspect me too? Do you suspect that I stole Master's blueprint?" Tang Jinan looked at LV Wenkang's furious expression and could only smile apologetically. Just as he was about to speak, Bai Jianmu, who had been silent with his head lowered, suddenly spoke. "I believe that eldest senior brother is not the person who stole the blueprint?" Everyone was stunned when they heard this. After they reacted, they all looked at Bai Jianmu. At this moment, Bai Jianmu was also full of bitterness. He did not want to say this, but if he did not say this, the situation would not be good. Bai Jianmu and Tang Jinan had different thoughts. Tang Jinan was only thinking about the current situation and their current plan. Bai Jianmu was thinking that if LV Wenkang was the person who stole the blueprint, then what would Yi Xian do? Didn't this mean that Yi Xian was wronged? If that was the case, then shouldn't Yi Xian be released? If Yi Xian was released, not only would he not be able to inherit the position of the branch leader, but he might not even be able to continue staying in the South County branch leader. Tang Jinan could ignore this situation, but Bai Jianmu could not. Ever since Yi Xian was locked up, he had already made preparations to become the next branch leader. It could be said that as long as Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint, then Bai Jianmu would definitely be the next branch leader. Although Zhang Leji would affect his plan, dealing with one person was better than dealing with both Yi Xian and Zhang Leji. Therefore, he would not allow anyone to ruin his plan, especially this kind of plan that was about to succeed. He would not allow anyone to ruin it. Bai Jianmu also knew that if he said that eldest senior brother LV Wenkang did not steal the blueprint, then it would cause countless trouble. However, he had to face this kind of trouble. If he did not face it, he would not have a chance. Therefore, he had to stand up and speak up for eldest senior brother LV Wenkang to prove that he was not the person who stole the blueprint. Only then could his plan be carried out and achieve his final goal. Just now, although Bai Jianmu had his head lowered and did not speak, he had always been paying attention to Tang Jianan. He hoped that Tang Jianan would stand up for him in this matter to prove that eldest senior brother LV Wenkang did not steal the blueprint. However, after his observation, he could tell that Tang Jianan wanted to follow Zhang Liji's words and say that eldest senior brother might steal the blueprint. Bai Jianmu did not want to see such an outcome, so he had to stop it. He must not let this happen. Tang Jianan looked at Bai Jianmu with some surprise. He didn't understand what Bai Jianmu was trying to do. Now, Zhang Liji's words were almost impossible to defend. Could it be that Bai Jianmu could still think of a way at this time? Tang Jianan thought that it was impossible. He had already thought of many ways to deal with it, but after careful analysis, the methods he thought of were useless. In the end, they would also fail. It was precisely because of these reasons that he understood this point, and decided to go along with Zhang Liji's words. At the very least, by doing this, his master would not be able to see through any clues. Because if eldest senior brother was not the one who stole the blueprints, would master suspect that the person who said so had ulterior motives when there was such obvious evidence to prove eldest senior brother was not the one who stole the blueprints? Although Tang Jianan and the other two had a plan, they carried it out without arousing his master's suspicion. If his master was suspicious, these plans could not be carried out. Therefore, Tang Jianan thought that following Zhang Liji's words was the only way. However, Bai Jianmu stopped him, which surprised Tang Jianan. He did not understand what Bai Jianmu wanted to say, or was he not afraid of his master's suspicion? Not only was Tang Jianan confused, but the other senior brothers present were also a little confused. Just now, Zhang Liji's words were absolutely reasonable. After thinking about eldest senior brother LV Wenkang's analysis, everyone thought that it was very reasonable. Therefore, everyone was certain that eldest senior brother LV Wenkang must be suspected of stealing the blueprint. No one doubted this point. However, Bai Jianmu raised an objection, which made everyone a little confused. They did not know what Bai Jianmu wanted to do. Even Zhang Liji felt a little strange. Even he was starting to believe his own words. Although he thought of those words on the spur of the moment, Zhang Liji thought about it carefully in his heart and became more and more suspicious. Eldest senior brother LV Wenkang gave up everything and wholeheartedly studied the art of mechanism. In the face of a blueprint that was more valuable than any treasure in the world, would such a person be tempted? Would he have the intention to steal it? Zhang Liji became more and more suspicious. He suspected that eldest senior brother LV Wenkang might really do that. However, Bai Jianmu raised an objection. Zhang Liji was stunned. Could it be that in this situation, eldest senior brother LV Wenkang was still not suspicious? Or could it be that Bai Jianmu had conclusive evidence to prove that this matter was not done by eldest senior brother LV Wenkang? Only in this way could he raise an objection on this matter. Because Zhang Liji knew that as long as Bai Jianmu raised an objection, his master would definitely ask him why he felt that eldest senior brother LV Wenkang was not the one who stole the blueprint. At that time, if Bai Jianmu was not prepared, how should he answer? This was also something that made Zhang Liji a little confused. In his opinion, Bai Jianmu should have no evidence to prove that eldest senior brother LV Wenkang was not the one who stole the blueprint. In this way, why would Bai Jianmu do this? Looking at Bai Jianmu's indifferent face, Zhang Liji's heart suddenly moved. He somewhat understood what Bai Jianmu was thinking and also understood what Bai Jianmu wanted to do. Zhang Liji understood that the reason for all of this was Yi Xian. If everyone said that LV Wenkang was suspicious and thought that LV Wenkang might have stolen the blueprint, then what would Yi Xian, who was locked up in the Repentance Pavilion, do? If eldest senior brother was the one who stole the blueprint, then shouldn't Yi Xian be released? Zhang Liji understood that as long as Yi Xian was released, then the person who would inherit the position of the next branch master would definitely have nothing to do with Bai Jianmu. This was because Yi Xian was originally the first successor. If there were no accidents, his master would definitely let Yi Xian be the next branch master of the South County branch. This was no longer a secret in the South County branch. Everyone knew about this matter. Not only that, even Sun Xinjing himself had mentioned this matter in front of everyone. Chapter 158. If Yi Xian was released, it would prove that he wasn't a suspect and that he wasn't the person who stole the blueprint. In that case, Sun Xinjing's words would hold true. Yi Xian would become the next leader. Bai Jinmu didn't want to see such a situation happen. Zhang Liji knew this very well. Everything Bai Jinmu had done was probably for the sake of the leader's position. Regardless of whether he had stolen the blueprint or not, he should be willing to see what was happening now. Therefore, Bai Jinmu definitely wouldn't allow this matter to change. If that happened, all his plans would fall through. As for becoming the leader, that would be impossible. Zhang Liji naturally understood why Bai Jinmu was doing this. He also understood that even if Bai Jinmu didn't have a choice, he would stop this from happening. This was because in Bai Jinmu's mind, other than Yi Xian, no one else could be the person who stole the blueprint. Even if Yi Xian really was the person who stole the blueprint, it wouldn't affect Bai Jinmu's decision. Zhang Liji calmed down slightly when he thought of this. He thought about it carefully and felt that there wouldn't be any unexpected changes. Only then did he look at Bai Jinmu again. After Bai Jinmu finished speaking, the person who was most shocked was obviously eldest senior brother LV Wenkang. When LV Wenkang heard Tang Jianan apologize, he already knew what Tang Jianan wanted to say. LV Wenkang's heart sank to the bottom. He grabbed Tang Jianan and questioned him with all his might, trying to get him to change his story. However, LV Wenkang knew that it was basically impossible. After apologizing in front of so many people, it meant that Tang Jianan had already made up his mind to say that he was a suspect and that he might be the person who stole the blueprint. How could he change his story just because of LV Wenkang's questioning? LV Wenkang was furious when he saw Tang Jianan's apologetic face. Tang Jianan's aptitude wasn't too good. Of course, this was only in comparison to his fellow disciples. If he was compared to others, his talent would be considered excellent. It was precisely because of this that LV Wenkang had helped Tang Jianan a lot when he first joined the sect. When Tang Jianan joined the sect at the age of 15, he was still an ignorant youth. When he had problems that he didn't know, LV Wenkang would always guide him carefully. At that time, LV Wenkang thought that he was the eldest senior brother and that he had the obligation to guide his junior brother. It could be said that Tang Jianan's skills were definitely related to LV Wenkang's SS. Looking at Tang Jianan, LV Wenkang recalled the time when Tang Jianan asked him questions when he was young. His naivety at that time had long disappeared with the passage of time. What was left? LV Wenkang remembered very clearly that there was a time when the young Tang Jianan was scolded by his master because he couldn't understand a blueprint. LV Wenkang could still remember the helplessness and grievance on his face. TTTT TTS. LV Wenkang could still clearly remember the joy on Tang Jianan's face when he learned the blueprint. LV Wenkang was also very happy when he saw it. All of that had vanished like smoke into thin air. That little junior brother of his had vanished with the passage of time. All that was left was this Tang Jianan, who had apologized to him. LV Wenkang admitted that according to Zhang Liji's words, there was a possibility that he had stolen the blueprint. However, LV Wenkong never thought that even Tang Jianan would think that he was the one who had stolen the blueprint. At that moment, LV Wenkong felt as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. He felt that giving up everything and focusing on studying the art of engineering was the right choice. At least, the art of engineering wouldn't betray him. Tang Jianan didn't feel good when he saw LV Wenkong's gloomy face. Naturally, Tang Jianan remembered eldest senior brother's teachings. However, he could only remember them in his heart. Faced with Zhang Liji's words, Tang Jianan had no way to change them. He could only go with the flow. Otherwise, he would definitely not end up well. Logically speaking, LV Wenkong and Tang Jianan had spent the longest time together, so their relationship should be the best. However, Tang Jianan only respected LV Wenkong because LV Wenkong was like his master. When he encountered difficulties, LV Wenkong would appear in front of him and help him wholeheartedly. Now, Tang Jianan wanted to point out that LV Wenkong was a suspect. Tang Jianan definitely didn't feel good. It was like betrayal. Tang Jianan knew that in LV Wenkong's heart, he was betraying him at this moment. However, what could he do? Although LV Wenkong was the eldest senior brother, he didn't have much influence in the entire South County branch. Tang Jianan knew that with his talent, it was almost impossible for him to stand out in the South County branch. Therefore, he had to choose someone to rely on to ensure his own interests. Tang Jianan didn't want to leave the South County branch, so he had to choose the right person so that he could continue to stay. Just like now, everyone knew that Yi Xian was the next leader. Tang Jianan naturally didn't want to offend him, so he had nothing to say. However, Yi Xian had now become the person who stole the blueprint. He was about to be expelled from the sect and lose the chance to inherit the position of leader. At this moment, Tang Jianan was faced with a choice. He could choose to continue to trust Yi Xian and think that he wasn't the person who stole the blueprint. He could even help him find the person who really stole the blueprint and then save Yi Xian and continue to work with Yi Xian. However, although this idea was good, it was really difficult to realize it. On the day Yi Xian was locked up, Tang Jianan thought about it for an entire night, but he couldn't think of any way to save Yi Xian. Zhang Liji said that just because Yi Xian knew the location of the blueprint, it was unfair to Yi Xian to determine that Yi Xian stole the blueprint. Tang Jianan knew very well what Zhang Liji said. It was indeed a little too childish to rely on the evidence to prove that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint. However, this happened. Not only that, even his master believed that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint. This was because only Sun Xinjing and Yi Xian knew the location of the blueprint. Under such circumstances, it was extremely difficult for Tang Jianan to find the person who stole the blueprint for Yi Xian. The key was that only his master and Yi Xian knew the location of the blueprint. Other than the two of them, Tang Jianan really didn't know anyone else. Who else would know the location of his master's blueprint? Facing this extremely disadvantageous situation, how should Tang Jianan choose? How should he choose? This was the biggest problem. Chapter 159. If that was the case, Yi Xian was probably the one who stole the blueprint. If that was the case, Tang Jianan felt that Yi Xian was unreliable. He had to find someone else to back him up. Bai Jianmu was undoubtedly the most reliable person besides Yi Xian. This was because if Yi Xian was no longer around, Bai Jianmu would very likely become the branch leader. Tang Jianan believed this very much. It was also because of this reason that Tang Jianan chose Bai Jianmu to help him fight against his enemies. LV Wenkong, who was originally in despair, immediately widened his eyes after hearing Bai Jianmu's words. He stared at Bai Jianmu in disbelief. "Junior Bai, do you really believe me?" Bai Jianmu nodded after hearing LV Wenkong's words. He smiled and said, "I believe you, senior brother. I believe that you didn't steal the blueprint." LV Wenkong's eyes lit up after hearing Bai Jinmu's words. He immediately turned around and looked at Zhang Leji. He said, "How is it? I said that I didn't steal the blueprint. How is it? Does anyone believe me? I believe everyone knows that I, LV Wenkong, would never do such a thing." After Zhang Leji heard LV Wenkong's words, he recovered from his astonished thoughts. Looking at the smiling LV Wenkong, Zhang Leji could only secretly apologize. He then turned his head to look at Bai Jinmu and asked with a smile, "Since Junior Bai said that Senior Brother couldn't have stolen the blueprint, then tell us your reason. Let us hear it and see how credible it is." Bai Jinmu didn't answer Zhang Leji's question. He turned around and looked at his master, Sun Xinjing. He cupped his fist and said, "Master, do you trust Senior Brother?" When Sun Xinjing heard this, he was stunned for a moment before he nodded. "Of course." Bai Jinmu smiled and nodded. "In that case, if Senior Brother wants to see the blueprint, will you let him see it?" After hearing Bai Jinmu's question, Sun Xinjing was really stunned this time. Sun Xinjing was well aware of the value of this blueprint, which was why he didn't show it to his disciples. Sun Xinjing had originally planned to wait for a period of time before considering who to pass the blueprint to. Of course, it was impossible for the blueprint to be shown to everyone. Sun Xinjing was prepared to treat this blueprint as a treasure and give it to the next branch master. The preciousness of this blueprint meant that it was impossible for everyone to see it. He could only choose someone he truly trusted to take a look at it or teach him a little. Sun Xinjing knew that many of his 8 disciples would never see this blueprint in their entire lives. For example, Tang Jinan. Sun Xinjing had never thought of letting him see the blueprint. This was because Tang Jinan's talent wasn't high to begin with. If he were to look at the blueprint, it wouldn't be of much help to him. Moreover, even if he could understand the blueprint, it would take too much time. In addition, there was another reason why this blueprint couldn't be leaked. This was because in this world, the Tianji sect wasn't the only one who researched mechanism technique. There were many others who were researching mechanism technique. Once they found out about the secret of mechanism techniques, it wouldn't be a good thing for the Tianji sect. Therefore, Sun Xinjing planned to only pass this blueprint to the next branch master. His initial plan was to pass this blueprint to Yi Xian. Sun Xinjing hadn't thought of passing it to anyone else. This was because he didn't have time to think about it during this period of time. He was completely attracted by this blueprint. Other than the necessary meals and sleep, he spent almost all his time studying this blueprint. At this moment, after hearing Bai Jinmu's question, Sun Xinjing didn't know how to answer. If he said that he originally planned to let LV Wenkong see this blueprint, then wouldn't he be breaking his promise if he didn't let him see it? However, if he said that he didn't plan to let LV Wenkong see this blueprint, then wouldn't LV Wenkong be bitterly disappointed? Under such circumstances, Sun Xinjing was in a difficult position. He didn't know how to answer Bai Jinmu's question. He thought for a moment before slowly replying, "I haven't thought about this matter, so I can't answer you now." Bai Jinmu was a little disappointed when he heard this. He had a motive for asking his master this question. If Sun Xinjing replied that he had originally intended to let LV Wenkong see the blueprint, then things would be easier. As long as he said that since LV Wenkong could see the blueprint anyway, then why would he want to steal it? It would be better for him to ask his master for the blueprint directly. That way, he would not be suspicious. However, Sun Xinjing didn't answer that way. He actually said that he hadn't thought about this matter, which put Bai Jinmu in a difficult position. This wasn't his plan. Since Sun Xinjing refused to answer according to his plan, then Bai Jinmu could only think of other ways. Thinking of this, Bai Jinmu turned to look at Zhang Leji and asked with a cold smile, "Third senior brother, do you really think that eldest senior brother is suspicious? Would he really steal that blueprint?" At the same time, Bai Jianmu thought to himself that as long as Zhang Liji dared to say that eldest senior brother was suspicious, and that there was a possibility that he would steal that blueprint, then he would immediately use his power to suppress him and tell everyone about how LV Wenkong had taken care of them all these years. Then, he would drag Zhang Liji down with him and unite all the senior and junior brothers to testify against Zhang Liji. After hearing Bai Jianmu's question, Zhang Liji shook his head and said, "I don't suspect eldest senior brother, nor do I suspect that eldest senior brother would steal that blueprint. I just said my own analysis. As for what everyone thinks, that's your business." Speaking of this, Zhang Liji looked around and clasped his hands at the senior and junior brothers. He said again, "What I said just now, think about it carefully. Is there such a possibility that eldest senior brother would steal that blueprint?" After saying this, Zhang Liji didn't look at Bai Jianmu anymore. Instead, he turned to look at Tang Jinan and said with a smile, "Second senior brother, other than eldest senior brother, you are the most senior. According to the order, it should be your turn to speak. Now, second senior brother, please tell us, is it possible that eldest senior brother would steal that blueprint?" After hearing Zhang Liji's question, Tang Jinan was in a dilemma. He didn't think about this question clearly just now. How should he answer it now? Just now, if Bai Jianmu didn't stop him, he would have already said his thoughts. According to Zhang Liji's words, Tang Jinan thought that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong would definitely steal that blueprint. Eldest senior brother's only purpose in life was to study mechanism technique. With such a precious blueprint in front of him, it was very likely that he would steal it and study mechanism techniques. Tang Jinan wanted to answer this, but Bai Jianmu stopped him just now. This meant that Bai Jianmu didn't want him to answer this way. Instead, he wanted him to deny this matter and prove that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong would never steal that blueprint. Chapter 160. What made Tang Jinan feel troubled was that if he did not answer that way, how should he answer? Say that it was impossible for his eldest senior brother to steal the blueprint. Tang Jinan believed that as long as he said that, Zhang Liji would definitely ask him why it was impossible for his eldest senior brother to steal the blueprint. At that time, how should he answer him? It was because he could not think of a reason why his eldest senior brother could not steal the blueprint that he wanted to answer that his eldest senior brother might have stolen the blueprint. If Zhang Liji asked, how should he answer? Should he say that he did not know? Tang Jinan knew that even if he said that he did not know, it would not work. Because if he did not know, how could he prove that his eldest senior brother did not steal the blueprint? If he pursued the matter, it would be like just now. Unless Tang Jinan stole the blueprint, how could he prove that his eldest senior brother was not the one who stole the blueprint without knowing? This kind of result was not what Tang Jinan wanted. Because if he did that, he would be dragged into the water. Although he wanted to drag Zhang Liji into the water just now, if he dragged himself into the water, that would definitely not be a good thing. At this moment, Tang Jinan was hesitant and did not know how to answer. He quietly turned his head to look at Bai Jianmu, wanting Bai Jianmu to help him out. When Bai Jianmu saw Tang Jinan's gaze, he was also in a difficult position. This problem was really difficult to solve. He originally wanted to drag Zhang Liji into the water, but he did not expect Zhang Liji to push LV Wenkong out. This was very difficult to deal with. If it was possible for his eldest senior brother to steal the blueprint, then wouldn't Yi Xian be fine? According to what Zhang Liji said just now, the possibility of his eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong, stealing the blueprint was much higher than Yi Xian stealing the blueprint. If everyone unanimously pointed out that his eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong, was the one who stole the blueprint, then Yi Xian was definitely not the one who stole the blueprint. If Yi Xian was released, then he would no longer have the chance to become a branch leader. Not only that, He had put in a lot of effort to lock Yi Xian up this time. It could be said that he had completely offended Yi Xian. If Yi Xian was released and Yi Xian became the branch leader of the South County branch, what would he do in the future? Bai Jianmu did not believe that Yi Xian would not take revenge on him for treating Yi Xian like that. Bai Jianmu believed that after Yi Xian became the branch leader, he might not take revenge on him at first, but as time passed, he would definitely cause trouble for him. At that time, it would not be easy for him to stay in the South County branch leader. At that time, it would not be easy for him to stay in the South County branch leader. He could only leave. If it was before this incident, he did not believe that Yi Xian would not do anything to him during the day. However, when he pointed out Yi Xian, he was the one who worked the hardest. Yi Xian would definitely bear a grudge in his heart. Repentance Pavilion was not a good place. Bai Jianmu knew that Yi Xian had been locked up in the Repentance Pavilion for the past few days. He was probably thinking about taking revenge on him every day. If such a Yi Xian was released, it would be a little chilling just thinking about it. Therefore, he could not let Yi Xian out. The matter of Yi Xian stealing the blueprint could not be changed. Now, the person who stole the blueprint could only be Yi Xian. No one else could steal the blueprint. Even if he really stole the blueprint, he could not say that he stole it. Yi Xian had to be the person who stole the blueprint. Regardless of whether he really stole the blueprint or not, Bai Jianmu knew that this point could not be changed. If it was changed, he would be finished. However, seeing Tang Jinan's gaze, Bai Jianmu was really in a difficult position. Now that Master was present, there were some things that he could not say carelessly. He had to say it with reason and evidence. Only then would he be able to gain the upper hand in this matter. If he spouted nonsense, he was afraid that even he would be suspected. This was because everyone knew the purpose of doing so. Other than framing someone else, there was no other reason. Especially since everyone knew that he was Yi Xian's strong rival in the competition for the branch master position. Under such circumstances, if he spouted nonsense, everyone would definitely be suspicious and suspect that he had ulterior motive. Therefore, whether it was just now or now, Bai Jianmu did not want to speak unless it was a critical moment. The main reason was, of course, that he did not want to get into trouble. But now there was a big problem. Whether or not eldest senior brother was a suspect was no longer important. What was important was that he could not let eldest senior brother be suspected. But how should he do it? To be honest, Bai Jianmu had really not thought about these problems in the past. After hearing Zhang Liji's words, he suddenly felt enlightened. According to Zhang Liji's analysis, eldest senior brother LV Wenkong definitely had the possibility of stealing the blueprint. This was something that everyone understood and acknowledged. Since ancient times there were many examples of this. It was definitely not strange to steal something back for the sake of one's favorite thing. Especially someone like eldest senior brother. His knowledge of mechanisms had reached a certain level. Such a person clearly knew that there was a precious blueprint not far away from him. Even if he wanted to steal it, there was really a possibility that he would do so. Moreover, the possibility was very high. It was so high that it made people somewhat believe that this was the truth. Bai Jianmu looked at Tang Jinan. Seeing his questioning expression, he knew that Tang Jinan did not have any ideas. Tang Jinan wanted to hear his opinion or ask him to help him out of this situation. Turning his head, Bai Jianmu saw eldest senior brother LV Wenkong again. At this moment, eldest senior brother LV Wenkong did not speak, but the expectant expression in his eyes was clearly seen by everyone. Seeing LV Wenkong's expression, some people even thought that eldest senior brother might really have stolen the blueprint. Was he begging for forgiveness? Bai Jianmu's gaze shifted between Tang Jinan and LV Wenkong. In the end, it stopped on Tang Jinan. He suddenly smiled and nodded. Then, he said loudly, "Second senior brother, This question is indeed difficult to answer. However, your relationship with eldest senior brother is the best. I think that you won't be able to make any judgment. Why don't we let third senior brother tell us his opinion? After hearing Bai Jinmu's words, Tang Jinan's heart immediately relaxed. He quickly nodded and said, "Yes, that is indeed the case. My relationship with eldest senior brother is very good. I really shouldn't speak too much. Let junior brother Zhang speak." At this point, Tang Jinan hurriedly turned his head to look at Zhang Leji. He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and said with a smile, "Third junior brother Bai is right. My relationship with eldest senior brother is very good. I really shouldn't talk nonsense. Third junior brother, please speak. We'll just listen from the side." After hearing Tang Jinan's words, Zhang Leji stared at Tang Jinan without saying a word. Tang Jinan, who was originally a little relaxed, became a little nervous under Zhang Leji's stare. The cold sweat on his forehead that had been wiped off appeared at this moment. He really did not want to answer this question. The key was that he had no way to answer this question. He was about to push this matter away, but after seeing Zhang Leji's gaze, his heart was in his throat again. Chapter 161. Looking at Zhang Leji's gaze, Tang Jinan smiled awkwardly. "Third junior brother, why don't you say it?" Zhang Leji shook his head. "No, we're all fellow disciples, and we usually have a good relationship. If we do as you say, then we can't talk about it anymore. Even what I said just now can't be said." Speaking until here, Zhang Leji turned to Sun Xinjing and cupped his hands. "Master, if second senior brother doesn't want to say it, then this disciple will take back what I said just now and won't interfere in this matter." After Sun Xinjing heard Zhang Leji's words, he was a little angry in his heart. Originally, when he saw Tang Jinan dawdling and not speaking, he was very annoyed in his heart. At this moment, when he saw that Tang Jinan actually didn't want to answer this matter, he was even angrier in his heart. If what Zhang Leji said was true and they were fellow disciples, then there was no need to say anything. Thinking until here, Sun Xinjing slammed the table and glared at Tang Jinan. He asked loudly, "As second senior brother, you don't want to set an example. Instead, you want to avoid this matter. What is the meaning of this?" Tang Jinan knew that something was wrong when Zhang Leji told this to his master. After hearing his master's reprimand, he was so scared that he hurriedly knelt down. "Master, this disciple is just thinking that I have a good relationship with eldest senior brother. If what I said offends eldest senior brother, then wouldn't it be a waste of eldest senior brother's care for me? Master, please understand." As soon as Tang Jinan said this, everyone knew that something was wrong. Bai Jinmu's expression kept changing. If what Tang Jinan said was wrong, then as long as they went against eldest senior brother, then wouldn't they offend eldest senior brother? If that was the case, then who would dare to say anything? Sun Xinjing, who was sitting at the head of the table, was also very unhappy. These people were all his disciples, and they were all cultivated by him. However, this Tang Jinan in front of him actually deceived him in order not to offend eldest senior brother Lv Wenkong. The more Sun Xinjing thought about it, the angrier he got. He suddenly slammed the table and shouted, "Don't you know the principle of respecting your master? Could it be that in order to not offend eldest senior brother, you have to lie to me? If you do this, are you worthy of all the grooming I've given you? Tang Jinan, you better think carefully about what you should do." Sun Xinjing's last words were almost shouted out. His voice was so loud that it made Tang Jinan's ears ring. Tang Jinan, who was kneeling on the ground, knew that things were not good after he said those words. However, the words that were said were like water that had been spilled. It was impossible to take them back. Tang Jinan knew that he could only think of a way to remedy the situation. Otherwise, not to mention the future, It was absolutely possible that he would be expelled from the sect by the furious master. Thinking of this, Tang Jianan hurriedly explained, "Master, I was wrong just now. I just wanted to say that we are all fellow disciples, and I don't want to waste our friendship. I really didn't mean anything else. Please forgive me." Tang Jianan was so anxious that he did not know what he was saying. After he said these words, Sun Xinjing was even more furious. "Tang Jianan, in order to not waste our friendship as fellow disciples, did you forget about the relationship between master and disciple?" At this point, Sun Xinjing suddenly slammed the table. This slap was so heavy that even the teacups on the table jumped up from the impact. "Tang Jianan, I took you in as my disciple because I saw that you were a loyal and honest person. But I didn't expect you to be such an ungrateful person. In order not to offend anyone, you would forget about your master." At this point, Sun Xinjing paused for a moment. He took a few quick breaths to calm himself down. Then, he slammed the table again and said angrily, "Tang Jianan, if you don't make things clear today, don't blame me for not taking our relationship as master and disciple into consideration and expelling an unfilial disciple like you from the sect." After hearing Sun Xinjing's words, Tang Jianan was so scared that his face turned ashen. Prostrating himself on the ground, he kowtowed profusely. "Master, your disciple says, please forgive me, your disciple will definitely say it. Please don't expel me from the sect." Tang Jianan was very wise. He knew his own level and knew that staying in the South County branch was the best choice. Therefore, he chose between Yi Xian and Bai Jianmu as his backer. His goal was naturally to stay in the South County branch. However, no matter how much he calculated, he did not expect that he would actually anger his master. Sun Xinjing rarely reprimanded his disciples. He would only reprimand them if they were too stupid or not focused when they were studying. The key was that Sun Xinjing rarely cared about the matters of the branch. Usually, he would study the mechanism in his room. There were not many things to do in the South County branch to begin with, so everyone made do with each other. In addition, the South County branch also had its own rules. For example, at the mountain gate the people would automatically change every day. Everyone already knew who would pick up the people every day and who should do what. Even without Sun Xinjing's command, nothing would go wrong. The key was that there were not many things to do in the South County branch, so everyone was at peace. After a long time, Tang Jianan actually forgot that his master was the most terrifying existence in the South County branch. Other people did not have the right to make Tang Jianan leave the South County branch. Even if they wanted him to leave, they would only secretly trip him up and force him to leave. However, Sun Xinjing did have the absolute right. As long as he said the word, he could make anyone leave the South County branch. At this moment, Tang Jianan was almost scared silly. He could say anything now as long as he was not expelled from the sect. Looking at Tang Jianan, who kept begging for mercy, Sun Xinjing, who was originally a little frustrated, could not bear it anymore. He suddenly waved his hand and said coldly, "All right, I'll give you another chance. Step aside." Tang Jianan was overjoyed when he heard this. He quickly kowtowed to his master before standing up and respectfully standing to the side. Looking at Tang Jianan, who stood up, Sun Xinjing suddenly said loudly, "Who else is there that doesn't want to say it? Step forward immediately." When everyone heard Sun Xinjing's words, they were all shocked. They hurriedly looked at their master and saw that his face was ashen as he looked at everyone. When everyone saw this, they could not help but kneel on the ground and say loudly, "Master, we don't dare." After hearing the disciples' answers, Sun Xinjing waved his hand. "All of you, stand up and think about what's going on." After saying this, Sun Xinjing sat back down on the chair and picked up the teacup on the table. Just as he was about to drink it, he saw that the tea in the teacup had spilled out, so he immediately ordered the person beside him, "Hurry up and change the tea." That person was already stunned by Sun Xinjing. At this moment, after hearing Sun Xinjing's words, he finally reacted. He quickly responded, picked up the teapot on the table, and ran out. Chapter 162. Looking at the few disciples in front of him, Sun Xinjing suddenly shouted sternly, "Today, if anyone dares to do anything half-heartedly, then don't blame me for being heartless. Think carefully about what you should do." After hearing Sun Xinjing's words, everyone was shocked. They knew that their master was angry and had to be careful from now on. Tang Jianan, who was kneeling on the ground, was so scared that cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Although he was the second senior, he was no different from a new disciple in front of their master. If he angered their master, he would be sent home. Sun Xinjing looked at the expressions of the disciples and nodded his head in satisfaction. He then turned his head to look at Tang Jianan and coldly said, "Get up. Tell me what you're thinking." Tang Jianan heard this and dared to stand up. "Master, I understand." After saying this, Tang Jianan stole a glance at Bai Jinmu. He saw that Bai Jinmu was also staring at him and constantly giving him signals with his eyes. Seeing Bai Jinmu's expression, Tang Jianan understood that Bai Jinmu was giving him signals. He also understood what Bai Jinmu wanted him to say. However, did he really have to say what Bai Jinmu said? Tang Jianan was a little uncertain. Bai Jinmu definitely wanted him to deny the possibility of eldest senior brother LV Wenkong stealing the blueprints. Even if Bai Jinmu didn't give him a meaningful glance, Tang Jianan understood what Bai Jinmu wanted him to do. Tang Jianan was also very clear about the current situation. If eldest senior brother LV Wenkong was a suspect, then Yi Xian's suspicion would naturally be reduced. He would even be released on the spot. If Yi Xian was released, then what would Bai Jinmu do? Ever since the blueprint was stolen, Tang Jianan had seen Bai Jinmu's behavior during this period of time. In order to prove that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint, Bai Jinmu had already shed all pretense of cordiality and used all kinds of methods to make his master believe that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint. However, if there was a possibility that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong stole the blueprint, then Yi Xian would naturally be released. After Yi Xian was released, their relationship naturally could not be the same as before. After all, it was impossible for Yi Xian not to remember Bai Jinmu's actions. This meant that once Yi Xian became the leader, Bai Jinmu would definitely not be able to stay in the South County branch. Not only that, even if Yi Xian did not become the leader, Bai Jinmu would not gain any benefit. He framed Yi Xian and did all kinds of things. If Yi Xian was not the one who stole the blueprint, then Bai Jinmu's actions were undoubtedly that of a villain. At that time, even if Yi Xian did not deal with him, Sun Xinjing would not let him off. After all, no one liked a villain. Bai Jinmu could frame his senior brother, so Sun Xinjing definitely did not have a good impression of him. At that time, Bai Jinmu would be in a difficult position. Sun Xinjing would no longer believe what he said in the future. At that time, Bai Jinmu would completely fall to the edge of the South County branch and become an outsider. He would no longer be able to become the leader. Therefore, Bai Jinmu did not want others to be the ones who stole the blueprint. If that happened, it would be harmful to him. In Bai Jinmu's opinion, the person who stole the blueprint could only be Yi Xian. Tang Jianan naturally knew what Bai Jinmu was thinking. He also understood that if Yi Xian was released, Bai Jinmu would have to stand aside. Thinking of this, Tang Jianan had an idea. He wanted to leave Bai Jinmu and join Yi Xian again. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, Tang Jianan kept thinking about what benefits it would bring him if things really turned out this way. The key now was Yi Xian. If Yi Xian was released, what would happen? Tang Jianan thought carefully. If Yi Xian was released and he joined Yi Xian's side again, would Yi Xian blame him? This was the key question. If he helped Yi Xian now, but Yi Xian was released and ignored all of this, he would still take revenge on him. Wouldn't that be too bad? Rather than that, he might as well choose to stand with Bai Jianmu and completely defeat Yi Xian. The key was how Yi Xian would treat him after he was released. Thinking of this, Tang Jinan couldn't make up his mind. He subconsciously glanced at Lu Warong and saw Lu Warong's face full of panic. Tang Jinan knew that Lu Warong was also a little scared now. Lu Warong wasn't someone who could do big things. He was a man of few words. What he had done today was already beyond his usual standard. Now that he heard that such a big thing had happened and that Yi Xian was likely to make a comeback, how could Lu Warong not be scared? Seeing Lu Warong's expression, Tang Jinan found it even harder to make up his mind. What should he do to benefit himself the most? Bai Jianmu. Tang Jinan immediately thought of Bai Jianmu and his heart sank. He had only been thinking about Yi Xian. How could he have forgotten about Bai Jianmu? Compared to Yi Xian, Bai Jianmu was the most difficult person to deal with. Bai Jianmu was different from Yi Xian. Yi Xian's identity was Sun Xinjing's disciple. In the South County branch, he had the highest skills and was deeply trusted by Sun Xinjing. It was very likely that he would become the next branch master. The most important thing about Yi Xian was that he would become the next branch master and the boss of the South County branch. However, Bai Jianmu was not simple either. In the South County branch, Bai Jianmu's skills were second only to Yi Xian. In the end, the two of them had never competed in this aspect. It was just that everyone thought that Bai Jianmu's skills were definitely inferior to Yi Xian's. Therefore, everyone had always thought that Yi Xian's skills were the highest in the South County. However, that was not the case. Although everyone did not talk about eldest senior brother LV Wenkong much, everyone knew that his skills and attainments in mechanism skills were definitely not inferior to Yi Xian's. In fact, he might even surpass Yi Xian's by a lot. Many people thought that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong's attainments in mechanism skills were not inferior to their master, Sun Xinjing's. As the branch master of the South County branch, Sun Xinjing was busy with trivial matters every day. Even if he wanted to wholeheartedly study mechanism skills, he did not have that much time. On the other hand, eldest senior brother LV Wenkong was different. In the South County branch, everyone knew that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong did not care about anything. He only cared about studying mechanism skills. Other than that, he had nothing else to do. Under such circumstances, everyone thought that even if eldest senior brother LV Wenkong's attainments in mechanism skills could catch up to their master, it would not be surprising. In addition, LV Wenkong was indeed talented in mechanism skills. Not only was his talent in this area not inferior to Yi Xian, but he seemed to be even stronger. Therefore, in the South County branch, other than their master, Sun Xinjing, Yi Xian was not the strongest in terms of mechanism skills. Chapter 163. The reason why Yi Xian was known as the most skilled person in the South County branch was because his eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong, basically did not appear in front of everyone. He did not have any competitive mentality and wanted to compete with his junior brothers. Therefore, everyone gradually forgot about him. In other words, everyone no longer compared his eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong, to his junior brothers. If they wanted to compare him, they would compare him to people like his master. Although Yi Xian's skill in mechanisms was very high, Bai Jianmu's skill level was not low either. However, the two of them had never officially compared, so everyone thought that Yi Xian's skill level was the highest, and Bai Jianmu's skill level was second. Although Bai Jianmu had never denied this in front of others, he would never admit that his skill was lower than Yi Xian's. Although his master also thought that Yi Xian's skill was higher than his, Bai Jianmu did not think so. He always thought that in the South County branch, other than his master, his skill was the highest. In addition, Bai Jianmu was a disciple of the Bai family in the South County. Although he was not the heir of the Bai family, his identity was definitely very important. Although the Bai family was not a sect, their status was definitely important. The Bai family had once produced many powerful people. For example, the current vice sect master of the Tiangongmen was a member of the Bai family. One of the elders of the medicine pavilion was also a member of the Bai family. A long time ago, the Bai family had sent their talented disciples to various sects to cultivate. Slowly, this situation was formed. Just like Bai Jianmu, if he became the leader of the South County branch, then the strength of the South County Bai family would become even stronger. Therefore, in terms of background, Bai Jianmu was much stronger than Yi Xian. However, it might also be because of this reason that Sun Xinjing wanted to pass the position of leader to Yi Xian. This was because if the position of leader of the South County branch was passed to Bai Jianmu, then things would become complicated. It was precisely because of these reasons that Tang Jianan was hesitant. If Bai Jianmu did not have a strong background, he would have joined Yi Xian's side without hesitation. However, Tang Jianan was worried that Yi Xian might still hold a grudge against him after he was released. At that time, even if he left the South County branch, he would not have a good ending. Bai Jianmu would definitely not let him off. With the Bai clan's strength, it would be a piece of cake to deal with him. Moreover, Bai Jianmu's strength was not only limited to his skill in mechanisms. Bai Jianmu's martial arts were also quite strong. Although Bai Jianmu had never used martial arts in front of Tang Jianan knew very well that in the entire South County, there were very few people whose martial arts were stronger than Bai Jianmu. If he betrayed Bai Jianmu and angered him, what would he do if Bai Jianmu attacked him? Tang Jianan also knew some martial arts, but it was not very high. It was not difficult for him to deal with some ordinary people, but it was impossible for him to deal with Bai Jianan. Tang Jianan guessed that he probably wouldn't even be able to receive a single move from Bai Jianmu. Under such circumstances, how should Tang Jianan choose? At this moment, Tang Jianan was so anxious that he was about to cry. He now regretted joining Bai Jianmu. If he had chosen to be neutral like 7th junior brother and 8th junior sister, he would have had nothing to do with it. Whether it was Yi Xian or Bai Jianmu who became the branch leader, he would have had nothing to do with it. He would not have been able to offend anyone. But now there was such a situation. Tang Jianan knew that he had to choose carefully at this time. Because if he made the wrong choice, he would be finished. Although he knew that he should choose carefully, Tang Jianan really did not know how to choose. If he chose Yi Xian, he was afraid that Bai Jianmu would take revenge on him. If he chose Bai Jianmu, he was afraid that Yi Xian would not let him off after he was released. Thinking of this, Tang Jianan felt more and more cold sweat on his forehead. More of it had already flowed down his forehead. Tang Jianan wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He felt that even more cold sweat appeared on his forehead. No matter how hard he wiped it, it would not stop. Zhang Liji sneered inwardly as he looked at Tang Jianan, who was constantly wiping his sweat. Zhang Liji knew very well that if Tang Jianan said that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong might have stolen the blueprint, then the situation would be reversed. Even if it could not completely reverse the situation, at least Yi Xian would be much less suspicious. Perhaps Yi Xian could also use this opportunity to be released. If Yi Xian was released and found out that Tang Jianan had framed him, then would Yi Xian let Tang Jianan off? Zhang Liji felt that it was impossible. What kind of place was the Repentance Pavilion? It was definitely a terrifying place. It was already considered good that the people who had stayed in the Repentance Pavilion did not have a mental breakdown. Yi Xian had been locked up in such a terrifying place. He was probably filled with resentment and had nowhere to vent his anger. If Yi Xian was released, then his anger would definitely erupt. When that happened, the unlucky ones would definitely be Tang Jianan and the other two. Looking at the hesitant Tang Jianan, Even Zhang Leji was a little anxious on his behalf. Tang Jianan really did not have a choice now. If he said that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong was not a suspect, then the ridiculous reason just now would not work. He had to come up with a decent reason that could at least explain this matter and convince others that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong could not have stolen the blueprint. However, would Tang Jianan be able to find such a convincing reason? Zhang Leji didn't know what the others were thinking, but he knew that it was basically impossible to come up with such a reason. This was because he had thought for a long time, but he still couldn't think of a reason to prove that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong couldn't have stolen the blueprint. Zhang Leji could not think of such a reason himself. He also did not think that Tang Jianan could think of such a reason. Not only that, Zhang Leji also did not believe that Bai Jianmu could think of such a reason. Under such circumstances, Zhang Leji felt that Tang Jianan's only choice was to testify that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong was suspected of stealing the blueprint. Just like just now, he could not deny it even if he wanted to. Even if he did not want to choose, his master would not allow it. Just now, Sun Xinjing had clearly said that if anyone dared to be perfunctory, then they would definitely not have a good ending. Zhang Leji guessed that under his master's rage, anyone who dared to be perfunctory would definitely be expelled from the sect. Whether or not there was such a possibility, Zhang Leji believed that no one would dare to test it out, because Tang Jianan was almost expelled from the sect just now. With such a living example in front of them, perhaps no one would dare to be perfunctory anymore. They had to say something real. Even if you were to lie, you had to have a good reason. If you did not have a good reason, then you were just being perfunctory. Chapter 164. Tang Jianan had to make a choice at this moment. His decision was quite important. It was related to the decision of his fellow disciples, Bai Jianmu's plan and Yi Xian's fate. Tang Jianan was hesitant, and Bai Jianmu did not feel good either. Bai Jianmu thought hard and had to find a perfect plan to deal with the situation in front of him. At this moment, he could already tell that Tang Jianan was hesitating. He was hesitating about what to say. This was definitely not good news for Bai Jianmu. If Tang Jianan said that his eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong, was suspected of stealing the blueprint, then Bai Jianmu knew that all his fellow disciples would probably say that his eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong, was suspected of stealing the blueprint. This was because even he himself felt that LV Wenkong was definitely very suspicious under such circumstances. However, even if Bai Jianmu knew that his eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong, was suspicious, he did not want Tang Jianan to say it. If Tang Jianan said it, Yi Xian would not be suspected. Once Yi Xian was released, all his plans would be ruined. Not only that, his future was destined. Bai Jianmu was definitely unwilling. He had stayed in the South County branch for 15 years and painstakingly cultivated the mechanism technique. Wasn't it just to become the head of the South County branch? His family also had great expectations for him. They hoped that he could become the head of the South County branch and let the Bai family have a place in the Tianji sect. However, just as his plan was about to succeed, Zhang Leji jumped out and ruined his plan. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu glanced at Zhang Leji, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. If this was outside, or if his master was not present, he would definitely make a move without hesitation. Even if he could not kill Zhang Leji, he would let him know that he, Bai Jianmu, was not to be trifled with. Unfortunately, all of this was just his imagination. His master was right in front of him, and Bai Jianmu did not dare to make a move. Even if he was fuming with anger, he could not make a move. If he endured it, there would still be a chance. However, if he made a move, Bai Jianmu knew that he would have no chance at all. At this moment, no matter how high his martial arts were, it was useless. Even if he was confident that he could kill Zhang Leji with one hand, he did not dare to make a move. He had come to the South County branch for 15 years. It was definitely not to kill Zhang Liji, but to become the branch leader. Bai Jianmu's parents were only ordinary members of the Bai family. If he became the leader of the South County branch, his identity would immediately change and he would become an elder of the Bai family. This was because this was the rule. As long as a member of the Bai clan became a figure of power in a sect, his family would naturally rise in status and become an elder of the Bai clan. The Bai clan now had a clan leader and 6 elders. This meant that the Bai clan already had a place in the 6 middle clans. They were even the ones who held power. The ranking of the elders of the Bai family could change at any time. It would change according to the status of the disciples in the Chinese language. Bai Jianmu knew that if he became the leader of the South County branch, his family could at least become the 5th-ranked elders. However, if he failed and was even chased out of the South County branch, the outcome would definitely not be good. Not to mention becoming an elder, it was hard to say if his family would be chased out of the Bai family. Therefore, Bai Jianmu was also very distressed. He was practically burning his boats and fighting with his back to the river. As long as he won, everything would be fine. However, if he lost, the outcome would not be good either. Therefore, Bai Jianmu had to fight to the end until the last moment. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu raised his head and looked at Tang Jianan. He saw that Tang Jianan was also looking at him. Bai Jianmu could see hesitation in Tang Jianan's eyes. Bai Jianmu knew that Tang Jianan was also facing a choice. However, Tang Jianan did not know how to choose. Ever since the blueprint was lost, Bai Jianmu had found someone to contact Tang Jianan. In the end, the two of them hit it off and became partners. However, at this moment, his former partner was actually hesitating. When the two of them first started discussing this matter, they were already certain that this time, Yi Xian would definitely not be able to turn the tables. Everyone knew the location of their master's blueprint. Only Yi Xian knew. In this way, other than the blueprint being stolen by Yi Xian, no one could think of any other possibility. Under such circumstances, the two of them had already determined that this time, Yi Xian would not be able to escape this calamity. After roping in Tang Jianan, Bai Jianmu felt that his confidence was even greater. This was because although Tang Jianan's attainments in the mechanism technique were not good, he was still the second senior brother. In the South County branch, the eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong, did not care about trivial matters. Then, the second senior brother, Tang Jianan, was about the same as the eldest senior brother in name. With the addition of the second senior brother, Tang Jianan, Bai Jianmu had thought that this matter was very stable. However, he did not expect that Zhang Liji would jump out and ruin his good deed. Now, the most important thing was that Bai Jianmu knew that he could not let Tang Jianan admit that the eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong, might have stolen the blueprint. Once Tang Jianan admitted that the eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong, might have stolen the blueprint, everything would be different. However, Bai Jianmu also knew that he could not blame Tang Jianan for this because he had seen what had happened just now. Tang Jianan just wanted to be a neutral person. He did not say a word, as if he had been expelled from the sect by his master. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for him to maintain a neutral stance. Tang Jianan had to make a choice. He had no way out. He could only choose between Yi Xian and Bai Jianmu. Bai Jianmu knew that even if Tang Jianan wanted to choose him and said that the eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong, could not possibly have stolen the blueprint, he had to find a convincing reason. Otherwise, his master would think that he was being perfunctory. The key was that this reason was not easy to find. Although Zhang Liji did not say much just now, everyone understood that the eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong, had given up everything for the sake of mechanics. At his age, if he were an outsider, he would probably have a group of children. However, the eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong, did not have anything. He did not have a group of children. He did not have a virtuous wife. In his eyes there was only mechanic. For such a person, it was definitely possible that he would steal the blueprint for the sake of mechanic. This was because to improve his mechanics, this was already the most important thing in the world in the eyes of the eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong. There was no other than the most important thing in the world. Under such circumstances, no one would suspect that the eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong, had stolen the blueprint. In order to improve his mechanics and break through the bottleneck he had encountered, even if he had stolen the blueprint, it would be reasonable and reasonable. No one would suspect anything. Under such circumstances, Bai Jianmu was very doubtful and also very afraid of Tang Jinan's choice. Chapter 165. Bai Jianmu was worried that Tang Jianan would say that LV Wenkong might have stolen the blueprint. If that was the case, things would be bad. However, even though Bai Jianmu knew that things were bad, he had no other choice. He could only keep winking at Tang Jianan, telling him not to admit that LV Wenkong was a stowaway. Tang Jianan naturally understood what Bai Jianmu was trying to say, so he was very anxious. The consequences of this matter were very serious. If he said that LV Wenkong had no chance of stealing the blueprints, it would be obvious that he was lying through his teeth. No one would believe him. However, if he said that LV Wenkong might have stolen the blueprints, then he would offend Bai Jianmu. The consequences of offending Bai Jianmu would be very serious. Everyone watched as Tang Jinan's face turned paler and paler. More and more cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Even his body was a little unstable, as if he would faint at any time. Indeed, Tang Jinan's current situation was not good. He had thought of all the ways to solve this problem, but he still couldn't think of a solution. Zhang Liji looked at Tang Jinan's embarrassed state and felt a little sorry for him. However, after thinking about it, he felt a little relieved. Although Tang Jianan looked very miserable at this moment, Zhang Liji also understood that if Tang Jianan was allowed to recover, he would probably work even harder to deal with him. After understanding this, Zhang Liji felt a little apologetic. However, he also knew what to do as a way to protect himself. Because if he didn't do this, according to the trajectory just now, he was afraid that he would be dragged down by them and become Yi Xian's accomplice. When that time came, he wouldn't have a good ending. At this moment, Lu Warong was a little afraid when he saw Tang Jinan's hesitant look. He was afraid that after Tang Jianan answered, he would be asked about it sooner or later. When that time came, how should he answer? Tang Jinan's problems and choices would be faced by him. Lu Warong would also face these problems. He had to make a choice between Yi Xian and Bai Jianmu. Lu Warong didn't know how to answer when he was asked about it. He was also thinking hard about what to do. At this point, Lu Warong was well aware that he had already offended Zhang Liji. In fact, through this incident, he had indirectly offended Yi Xian. If Yi Xian was released, then he would definitely be in trouble. Lu Warong turned his head to look at Bai Jianmu. He discovered that Bai Jianmu was also frowning, deep in thought. This question was really hard to answer. At this moment, whether or not eldest senior brother LV Wenkong would steal the blueprint was no longer important. What was important was that Yi Xian would be justified through this matter, and would even be released immediately. Unless they also locked up their eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong, and waited for the truth of the matter to come out before making a decision. However, things weren't that simple. After asking LV Wenkong, Zhang Liji would definitely continue asking questions. Because Zhang Liji had said that the questions would be asked in order. That was to say, first senior brother would be the first, second senior brother would be the second, and so on until all the questions were asked. Everyone knew that Zhang Liji would definitely question everyone. When the time came, according to what he said just now, everyone would be a suspect. Because everyone studied the art of engineering, the importance of the blueprint was the same for everyone. It could be said that among the people present, no matter who obtained the blueprint, it would greatly increase their knowledge in the area of mechanism techniques. This point no one would doubt. It was precisely because of this that everyone would be a suspect in the end. And this was Zhang Leji's goal. Since he didn't know who stole the blueprint, then he would make everyone a suspect. This would prevent Yi Xian from being the only suspect. Seeing everyone staring at him, Tang Jinan's heart was about to break down. He never thought that he would be the first to face such a result. What should he do? Tang Jinan thought hard. He kept looking at everyone's expressions in the hall, trying to find a way to help himself through this difficult situation. After thinking for a while, Tang Jinan's eyes suddenly lit up. He thought of a solution that wasn't really a solution. Although he might not be able to get through this difficult situation, as long as he could get past his master, everything else would be easy. With an idea in mind, Tang Jinan's complexion became much better. He wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead, turned his head to look at his master, Sun Xinjing, and cupped his fists in salute. Master, according to what junior brother Zhang said just now, first senior brother LV Wenkang is indeed a suspect. Moreover, he is very suspicious because everyone knows what kind of person first senior brother is and what kind of level he has reached in the art of engineering. Therefore, first senior brother might really steal the blueprint. Speaking of this, Tang Jinan turned to look at first senior brother LV Wenkang. However, he saw that LV Wenkang's face was also pale, and the cold sweat on his forehead was no less than his own. His eyes were filled with despair, and even his body was trembling slightly. Seeing this scene, Tang Jinan secretly sneered in his heart. Only then did he turn around to look at his master again and said seriously, Master, although it is possible that first senior brother LV Wenkang stole the blueprint, don't forget that first senior brother doesn't know the location of the blueprint. Even if he wanted to steal the blueprint, I'm afraid he wouldn't have the chance to do so. Even if first senior brother wanted to get the blueprint, he definitely wouldn't be able to find it. Therefore, I believe that first senior brother is definitely not the person who stole the blueprint. Because he doesn't know the location of the blueprint, he naturally wouldn't be able to steal it. Sun Xinjing was stunned when he heard this. He looked at Tang Jinan and thought about what he meant. After thinking for a while, Sun Xinjing felt that Tang Jinan's words made sense. That blueprint was indeed very important to LV Wenkang. However, LV Wenkang didn't know the location of the blueprint. Even if he wanted to steal it, he wouldn't be able to do so. At this moment, everyone in the hall was in a different mood. In the beginning, when Tang Jinan said that first senior brother LV Wenkang might have stolen the blueprint, Bai Jianmu's heart sank. He knew that it was over this time. As long as Tang Jinan said that first senior brother LV Wenkang might have stolen the blueprint, all the other senior brothers would say that LV Wenkang might have stolen the blueprint. Then, things would become extremely bad. If that really happened, Bai Jianmu believed that Zhang Leji would definitely jump out and ask his master to release Yi Xian. After Yi Xian was released, Bai Jianmu would definitely be the first to suffer. Bai Jianmu didn't doubt this at all. After all, he had already thoroughly offended Yi Xian. Once Yi Xian was released, he would definitely seek revenge. However, just as Bai Jianmu's heart sank to the bottom, Tang Jinan suddenly made a huge reversal. Chapter 166. At this moment, Bai Jianmu's heart was filled with surprise and joy. When he heard Tang Jinan's last words, he was overjoyed. Tang Jinan's words were very clear. Eldest senior brother LV Wenkang was indeed suspicious, but he did not know where the blueprint was placed. This meant that even if he was suspicious, it was absolutely impossible for him to steal the blueprint. In this way, Yi Xian was still the most suspicious because he was indeed the only one who knew the location of the blueprint. Everyone in the South County branch knew this, and no one could change this fact. This was the most disadvantageous situation for Yi Xian. After Tang Jianan said this, he was also secretly observing his master's expression. Although his words were reasonable, he knew very well that this was also a way to smooth things over. In other words, he was acting shamelessly and had no substance at all. At first, he said that it was possible for eldest senior brother to steal the blueprint, but later on, he said that even if eldest senior brother had the possibility of stealing the blueprint, he would not be able to do it. In this way, it was as if he did not say anything. It did not help the matter at all. Whether eldest senior brother LV Wenkang stole the blueprint or not was still not clear. At this moment, the happiest person was naturally the eldest senior brother, LV Wenkang. After hearing the first half of Tang Jianan's words, LV Wenkang's face was already ashen. He was like a prisoner waiting to be sentenced, but now, he had received the most serious sentence. At this moment, LV Wenkang only felt extremely desolate in his heart. Looking at the fellow disciples in the hall, he felt a sense of loneliness. It was as if these fellow disciples who were usually very close to him were getting further and further away from him. Although everyone was standing very close to him, at this moment, LV Wenkang actually felt that everyone was standing very far away from him. Looking at these familiar faces in the hall, LV Wenkang only felt a sense of oppression in his heart. These junior brothers had all entered the sect later than him. It could be said that when they first learned the mechanism technique, he was basically the one who taught these junior brothers. In terms of the mechanism technique, LV Wenkang was very patient. He never shouted at these junior brothers, and he almost never reprimanded them. However, at this time, these junior brothers accused him of stealing his master's blueprint in front of his master. This made LV Wenkang feel that all of this was so laughable. If Zhang Leji was the only one who voiced this suspicion, then everyone could still study it. However, second junior brother Tang Jianan also agreed with Zhang Leji's statement, which made it hard for LV Wenkang to accept. This was because LV Wenkang also knew that once Tang Jianan said that he was suspected of stealing the blueprint, then the rest of the juniors would definitely take advantage of the situation and say that he was suspected of stealing the blueprint. At that time, he would really be a suspect. LV Wenkang also knew that Tang Jianan's answer was very important. If he answered that he was not suspicious, then the other brothers would also carefully consider how to answer this question. Tang Jianan's answer was very crucial. LV Wenkang was very clear that when he heard the first half of Tang Jianan's sentence, he already understood that this matter was irreversible. Because of this incident, Yi Xian was locked up in the Repentance Pavilion. LV Wenkang didn't think much of it, but when it came to himself, he felt a little uncomfortable. He thought that in a while, the other brothers would all say that he was a suspect. Master would also lock him up in the Repentance Pavilion. At that time, the suspicion of stealing the blueprint would be irreversible. When he thought of this, LV Wenkang felt like all his hopes were dashed. At this moment, he was really disappointed in everyone. Just as LV Wenkang was feeling extremely disappointed, he suddenly heard the second half of Tang Jianan's sentence. Although it is possible that eldest senior brother stole the blueprint, he doesn't know the location of the blueprint. Even if he wanted to steal the blueprint, there is no place to do so. Therefore, I believe that eldest senior brother can't be the person who stole the blueprint. Tang Jianan's words were like the sound of nature in LV Wenkang's ears. It made his heart, which had sunk to the bottom of the valley, rise again. His originally ashen face miraculously returned to normal at this moment. However, his body trembled even more violently. This time, it wasn't because of anger, but because of excitement. At this moment, LV Wenkang also understood. That's right, he didn't know the location of the blueprint. Even if he was allowed to steal it, where would he go to steal it? Looking at Tang Jianan's smiling face, LV Wenkang felt extremely close to him. Tears welled up in LV Wenkong's eyes. He simply didn't know what to say. Everything felt like a dream. Although the first part of the dream was a nightmare, the second part was so unexpected. LV Wenkong composed himself and smiled at Tang Jianan. Then, he cupped his hands at his master and said loudly, "Master, although I like to study the art of mechanisms, I can't steal your blueprint. Moreover, second junior brother has already said that I don't know the location of the blueprint. Even if you want me to steal it, I don't know where to start." At this point, LV Wenkong bowed deeply and said loudly again, "Master, I didn't steal your blueprint. Master, this disciple didn't steal the blueprint. Master, please investigate." At this moment, Sun Xinjing also calmed down. After hearing LV Wenkong's words, he smiled and waved his hand. "I got it. You can stand aside for now." After saying that, Sun Xinjing turned to look at Zhang Leji and asked, "Tang Jianan has already explained this matter. What do you think?" When Zhang Leji had heard Tang Jianan's answer, he had been shocked. He hadn't expected Tang Jianan to give such an answer. At first, Zhang Leji had thought that as long as Tang Jianan said that there was a possibility that eldest senior brother had stolen the blueprint, his next step would be to tell his master. Since there was a possibility that everyone had stolen the blueprint, this also proved that Yi Xian wasn't the only suspect. He could be released first so that everyone could find the person who had stolen the blueprint. Zhang Leji knew that once Yi Xian was released, this matter would be much easier to handle. After all, he wasn't the only suspect who had stolen the blueprint. Even if they couldn't find the blueprint in the end, it wouldn't have anything to do with him. However, Tang Jianan's answer disrupted Zhang Leji's plan. Zhang Leji was shocked and his plans were completely disrupted. What should he do next? Zhang Leji felt a headache coming on as he looked at the delighted Bai Jianmu. He knew that there was no possibility of a peaceful resolution in this situation. They could only fight tit for tat and wait for one side to fall. Until now, if this matter could be resolved peacefully, Zhang Leji would definitely choose to do so. He wouldn't use this method. However, after what had just happened, Zhang Leji understood that if he didn't clarify the matter, Bai Jianmu would definitely use this matter to drag him down. He would also send his third senior brother to hell and become Yi Xian's companion. Chapter 167. Zhang Leji knew that he couldn't let his guard down. If he allowed Bai Jianmu to catch his breath, he would be the unlucky one. He believed that as long as Bai Jianmu had the chance, he would definitely implicate him in this matter and make him suffer. Although Sun Xinjing's expression was still as calm as water, Tang Jianan could see the acknowledgement in his master's eyes. At this moment, he was completely relieved and knew that he had passed this matter. Knowing that he had passed, Tang Jianan suddenly felt a sense of hatred towards Zhang Leji. If not for Zhang Leji's suggestion, he wouldn't have been in such a predicament. When he recalled that he was drenched in cold sweat and his body was trembling, Tang Jianan's hatred grew even stronger. After hearing eldest senior brother LV Wenkong's words and seeing his agitated expression, Tang Jianan finally felt relieved. He knew that he hadn't offended eldest senior brother. At the same time, he felt that he hadn't let eldest senior brother down. When he heard his master's question to Zhang Leji, Tang Jianan couldn't help but turn to look at Zhang Leji. He wanted to hear how he would answer his master. Zhang Leji was anxious, but he didn't show any expression on his face. This was because he knew that if Tang Jianan and the others saw that he was anxious, things would be even worse for him. Seeing that Zhang Leji didn't answer, Bai Jianmu felt smug and couldn't help but urge him. "Third senior brother, master is asking you a question. Hurry up and answer." Bai Jianmu sneered in his heart as he asked the question. "I'll let you be arrogant for a long time. Answer it. Let's see what you're going to do. Now that eldest senior brother is no longer a suspect, let's see what else you can say." This was because no matter what, the fact that Yi Xian knew the location of the blueprint wouldn't change. After hearing Bai Jianmu's urging, Zhang Liji thought for a moment before he cupped his fists and said, "Master, I think that second senior brother's answer was inappropriate." Sun Xinjing was stunned when he heard that. Then, he asked doubtfully, "What's inappropriate about it?" Zhang Liji replied slowly after hearing his master's question. "Master, I'm asking if it's possible for eldest senior brother to steal the blueprint. I'm not asking if eldest senior brother will steal the blueprint. Therefore, I think that second senior brother's answer was inappropriate." After listening to Zhang Liji's words, Sun Xinjing nodded in understanding. That was indeed the case earlier. Zhang Liji's question was indeed whether it was possible for eldest senior brother to steal the blueprint, not whether eldest senior brother would steal it. However, Sun Xinjing did not understand. What was the difference between the two answers? Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing asked even more doubtfully, "Is there any difference between the possibility of LV Wenkong stealing the blueprint and the possibility of LV Wenkong stealing the blueprint?" After listening to Sun Xinjing's question, Zhang Liji nodded. "It's indeed different. If there's a possibility that eldest senior brother stole the blueprint, it means that he didn't have the intention to do so. As for whether or not he would steal the blueprints, it meant that he was not the one who stole the blueprint. Of course, these two problems are different." Zhang Liji cupped his fists at Sun Xinjing and said loudly, "Master, I would like to ask second senior brother to answer this question again. Please allow it." After hearing Zhang Liji's words, Sun Xinjing pondered for a moment before nodding in agreement. "All right, you can ask him again." After hearing this, Zhang Liji turned to look at Tang Jianan. When he saw the coldness in Tang Jianan's eyes, he could not help but be shocked. Seeing the coldness in Tang Jianan's eyes, Zhang Liji knew that Tang Jianan hated him to the core. At this moment, he was probably thinking of ways to take revenge. Thinking of this, Zhang Liji sighed in his heart. To be honest, Tang Jianan and Zhang Liji used to have a good relationship. When the two of them were free, they would definitely get together to drink, play chess, or chat together. Unexpectedly, the relationship between the two of them had turned out to be like this. Thinking of this, Zhang Liji's heart was filled with uneasiness. What exactly caused the relationship between the two of them to become like this? From today onwards, Zhang Liji had already seen that Tang Jianan was no longer the Tang Jianan of the past. The current Tang Jianan was already Bai Jianmu's accomplice. Everything they did was to target Yi Xian. Zhang Liji had already seen the essence of this matter. It was no longer a matter of stealing the blueprints, but a matter of the next leader's successor. If Yi Xian was not locked up, he would definitely be the next leader. However, now that Yi Xian was locked up, Zhang Liji also knew that the next leader would either be himself or Bai Jianmu. Under such circumstances, Zhang Liji was certain that Bai Jianmu definitely did not want Yi Xian to be released. This was because once Yi Xian was released, he would no longer have the chance to be the leader. Even if Yi Xian was locked up, Bai Jianmu still had an opponent, and that was Zhang Liji. Zhang Liji was also very clear about this point. Today, if he did not clarify the matter, Bai Jianmu would not let him off because he had obstructed his path to becoming the leader. Just now, Tang Jianan's answer was very important. Not only Zhang Liji knew this, but Bai Jianmu was also very clear about this point. Tang Jianan's answer just now was as if he had not said anything. The matter had returned to its original point. Yi Xian was still the biggest suspect because he was the only one who knew where Sun Xinjing put the blueprint. Zhang Liji slowly walked in front of Tang Jianan. Although Tang Jianan's eyes flashed with a cold light, Zhang Liji saw it but pretended not to see it. He still asked with a smile, "Second senior brother, you must have heard what I said to Master just now. What we want to talk about now is whether eldest senior brother had the intention to steal the blueprints, not whether the blueprints were stolen by eldest senior brother. Therefore, second senior brother, please answer the question just now again. After listening to Zhang Liji's words, Tang Jinan's heart surged with anger again. This anger rushed to his head, and he couldn't help but want to explode. He had finally thought of a way to answer that question and finally fooled Master. However, Zhang Liji actually wanted him to answer it again. How should he answer this? When Zhang Liji asked this question, the solution that he had thought of with great difficulty was swept away, and the matter returned to its original point. He had to face the question just now again and say whether eldest senior brother had the intention to steal the blueprints. Whether eldest senior brother had the intention to steal the blueprints or not, Tang Jinan's answer in his heart was certain. Yes. Tang Jinan was certain that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong would definitely have such an idea because he had the same idea when facing the blueprints. However, when he saw that Master was still sitting at the head of the table and his fellow disciples were still looking at him, Tang Jinan could only take a few deep breaths and suppress the anger in his heart. Chapter 168. At this moment, Tang Jinan knew that he had to face this problem again. The problem he was facing now was still the same as before. There was no change at all. He said that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong wanted to steal the blueprint, but he didn't say whether he would do it or not. If he did, the consequences would be worse. Because as long as everyone thought that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong wanted to steal the blueprint, and he didn't say whether he would do it or not, then everyone would think that he had solved all the problems. In this way, eldest senior brother LV Wenkong would still be facing the same problem. After hearing Zhang Liji's question, the joy on by Jianmu's face instantly dissipated, and his heart was once again in his throat. He also knew very well that after Zhang Liji's question, things had returned to the original point. They were still facing the same problem. Seeing that Tang Jinan's forehead was covered in cold sweat again, Bai Jianmu suddenly gritted his teeth, took a step forward, and cupped his fist to his master. Master, I think that second senior brother has already answered this question, so there's no need to answer it again. I think that third senior brother is forcing him to do something. He must have ulterior motives. Master, please understand. Sun Xinjing was also waiting for Tang Jinan's answer. At this moment, after hearing Bai Jianmu's question, he turned to look at Zhang Liji and asked, "What do you think?" Bai Jianmu is right. I think that Tang Jinan has already answered this question, so there's no need to answer it now. After hearing Sun Xinjing's words, Tang Jinan was immediately overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed to his master and said loudly, "Master, you are wise. I have already answered this question, so there's no need to answer it this time." Sun Xinjing didn't answer Tang Jinan's question. He only looked at Zhang Liji, waiting to hear what Zhang Liji had to say. After all, the person who asked this question wasn't him, but Zhang Liji. Even if he didn't want to ask, he needed Zhang Liji's permission. Although he could force Zhang Liji to follow his orders, it was meaningless. Sun Xinjing naturally wouldn't do that. After hearing his master's words, Bai Jianmu was so happy that he almost jumped up. As long as Tang Jinan didn't answer this question, everything would be easy to handle. The most important thing was that when Tang Jinan answered this question just now, he did not offend his master, nor did he offend his eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong. This answer was very smooth. However, Tang Jinan was the second senior brother, and Zhang Liji was the third senior brother. After the second senior brother finished answering, it was the third senior brother's turn. His third senior brother was Zhang Liji. Bai Jianmu wanted to see how Zhang Liji would answer this question. Bai Jianmu knew in his heart that this was an opportunity, a great opportunity. He used this question to ask Zhang Liji. According to Zhang Liji's question, Zhang Liji definitely suspected that LV Wenkong would steal the blueprint. At that time, the person who offended eldest senior brother would be Zhang Liji. If eldest senior brother stood on his side, then this matter would be much easier to handle. Although eldest senior brother LV Wenkong did not care about the trivial matters of the South County branch, he was still the eldest senior brother after all. His words still had some influence. If eldest senior brother LV Wenkong joined his side, then it would be easier to deal with Zhang Liji. Bai Jianmu looked around and calculated in his heart. If eldest senior brother joined his side, then there would be 4 people on his side. Who else was left? 7th junior brother and 8th junior sister. These 2 people were useless. It was useless even if they were not here. In this way, the other party only had Zhang Liji and Yi Xian who was locked up. As long as he took this good opportunity to deal with Zhang Liji and prevent him from making a comeback for Yi Xian, then this matter would be settled. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu's mood immediately improved. His originally nervous mood was completely relieved. Not only was Bai Jianmu relieved, but even Lu Huarong was relieved. Second senior brother Tang Jianan was on the same side as him. If he collapsed, he would be finished too. That was why he was so anxious. Lu Huarong's situation was similar to Tang Jianan's. In the South County branch, in terms of status, he was only slightly stronger than 8th junior sister. Even 7th junior brother was probably stronger than him. Under such circumstances, if he did not fight for himself, it would be a problem for him to stay in the South County branch. It was precisely because of this reason that Lu Huarong joined Bai Jianmu's side. Lu Huarong was not an idiot. He would not choose easily. He knew that second senior brother Tang Jianan had already reached an agreement with Bai Jianmu and became a member of their side. That was why he agreed to join their side. Lu Huarong, who had always been cautious, naturally considered the pros and cons of joining Bai Jianmu's side. With second senior brother Tang Jianan joining Bai Jianmu's side, their strength would be much stronger. Lu Huarong knew that Bai Jianmu's opponents were only Yi Xian and Zhang Liji. Yi Xian was Bai Jianmu's biggest competitor. However, Yi Xian was locked up for stealing the blueprint. This gave Bai Jianmu a chance. Lu Huarong knew that in the past, Yi Xian had his master taking care of him, so Bai Jianmu could not do anything to him. But now Yi Xian had actually made a mistake in such a big matter. It was impossible for him to turn the tables. In other words, Bai Jianmu only had one competitor left, and that was third senior brother Zhang Liji. Between Bai Jianmu and Zhang Liji, Lu Huarong actually did not think highly of Zhang Liji. Zhang Liji's attainments in the mechanism technique seemed to be inferior to Bai Jianmu's. Therefore, although he was also one of the competitors for the South County branch leader, his chances of becoming the branch leader were not high. On the contrary, Bai Jianmu's chances were very high. In the South County branch leader, everyone knew that in terms of attainments in the mechanism technique, other than Yi Xian, Bai Jianmu was the second. Under such circumstances, Lu Huarong knew that if there were no accidents, Bai Jianmu would definitely be the next branch leader. Bai Jianmu's attainments in the mechanism technique were very high. In addition, with the help of second senior brother Tang Jianan, if he joined their camp, Lu Huarong believed that they would be the strongest force in the South County branch leader. Lu Huarong even suspected that even if Yi Xian was released at this moment, he might not be able to defeat Bai Jianmu. This was because Bai Jianmu's side, with him and second senior brother Tang Jianan joining, could be considered the strongest force in the South County branch leader. However, Yi Xian only managed to achieve what he had today because of his master's trust in him. The problem was that he was locked up because of the blueprint. If they wanted to lock Yi Xian up in the Repentance Pavilion, only Sun Xinjing could personally give the order. After suffering so much in the Repentance Pavilion, Lu Huarong guessed that Yi Xian would definitely not be satisfied. At that time, Sun Xinjing and Yi Xian would not have a good relationship, and Yi Xian would be finished. Chapter 169. Lu Huarong knew that even if Yi Xian was released, it wouldn't end well for him. Sun Xinjing had personally given the order to lock up Yi Xian. When that happened, the two of them would definitely be estranged and have different opinions. They might even hate each other. Under such circumstances, Sun Xinjing would probably slowly give up on Yi Xian. As for the possibility that Sun Xinjing would compensate Yi Xian and let him become a branch leader again, Lu Huarong felt that it was unlikely. After all, the Repentance Pavilion wasn't a good place. Yi Xian had suffered so much, so he definitely wouldn't be happy. Sun Xinjing naturally knew what the Repentance Pavilion was like. In order to prevent Yi Xian from taking revenge on him in the future, he definitely wouldn't give Yi Xian the chance to become a branch leader. It was like someone slapping you. After the incident, no matter how he explained, you would probably remember that he had slapped you. When you became successful in the future, you would definitely remember that he had slapped you. As for whether or not he would take revenge, no one dared to say. Therefore, after figuring out these problems, Lu Huarong resolutely joined Bai Jianmu's camp. He originally thought that everything was settled, but he didn't expect third senior brother Zhang Liji to suddenly raise this issue. Lu Huarong was shocked. Although Lu Huarong was usually taciturn, he wasn't a fool. He understood the stakes involved. If Master wasn't present at this moment, everything would be fine. It wouldn't matter what everyone said. However, Master was sitting right in front of him. If he was stumped by this issue, Zhang Liji would have a chance to turn the tables. Not only that, but Yi Xian would also have a chance to turn the tables. When that time came, it would be really bad. If second senior brother Tang Jinan's answer was that eldest senior brother might steal the blueprint, then he would have completely offended eldest senior brother. If Yi Xian was also released, they would have Yi Xian, Zhang Liji, and their eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong. After being offended by Tang Jinan, he would definitely join Yi Xian's faction. When that happened, they would have three people. Not only that, seventh junior brother Mei Guangji also had a good relationship with Yi Xian. As long as Yi Xian was released, Lu Huarong was sure that he would join his camp without hesitation. At that time, Yi Xian's camp would have 4 people, while his side would only have 3. In terms of strength, they would be weaker than the other side. Although they could also rope in 8th junior sister Li Shuiyan, it would be useless. 8th junior sister Li Shuiyan was only in her teens. Even if she stood on their side, it would be useless. In the end, Yi Xian's side would definitely be stronger than his. When it came time to compete for the position of branch master, even if Yi Xian wasn't the branch master, it wouldn't be a good thing for Zhang Liji to become the branch master. If he treated Zhang Liji and Yi Xian like this, Lu Huarong was sure that he wouldn't have a good ending when Zhang Liji became the branch master. At this point, Lu Huarong was very clear that this was a critical moment. All the questions would depend on second senior brother Tang Jinan's answer. Just now, second senior brother Tang Jinan's words had really made Lu Huarong overjoyed. He thought that there was a turning point for the situation. Seeing the excited eldest senior brother LV Wenkong, Lu Huarong was relieved. He knew that LV Wenkong wouldn't stand on Yi Xian's side. Unfortunately, his happiness didn't last long. What happened next gave him a headache. Third senior brother Zhang Liji asked second senior brother Tang Jinan to answer the question again. There was no need to answer whether eldest senior brother had stolen the blueprint. He only needed to answer whether eldest senior brother had any intention of stealing the blueprint. This kind of question was the most difficult to answer. Lu Huarong knew very well that second senior brother Tang Jinan had encountered a problem this time. It was impossible for him to answer the question like he had just now. Third senior brother Zhang Liji hadn't restricted him, so he could answer without offending either side. But now, Lu Huarong knew that Tang Jinan really had a hard time answering the question this time. Lu Warong didn't need to hear second senior brother Tang Jinan's answer to whether eldest senior brother LV Wenkong had any intention of stealing the blueprint. Yes, he definitely did. Eldest senior brother definitely had the intention of getting his hands on the blueprint. There was no doubt about this because this was the truth. Eldest senior brother had abandoned his wife and children for the sake of researching mechanism technique. Apart from mechanism techniques, there was nothing else that could attract his attention. And that precious blueprint was eldest senior brother LV Wenkong's Achilles heel. It could be said that it was what he wanted the most. As long as eldest senior brother LV Wenkong got his hands on that blueprint, his strength would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. Under such circumstances, anyone would say that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong would definitely want to get his hands on that blueprint. Everyone could think of the answer to this question. However, if second senior brother Tang Jinan really answered in this way, then things would be really bad. Everything would go according to his plan. In the end, Yi Xian would be released and form a four-man team to fight against his side. Lu Warong felt a headache at the thought of this. He was a little regretful now. He regretted joining Bai Jinmu's team. If he had chosen to be neutral like 7th junior brother and 8th junior sister, there wouldn't be such a troublesome matter. In fact, if he wanted to choose a side, it would have been better to choose later. It wouldn't have been too late to choose after the matter was settled. Lu Warong thought about how he had actually taken the initiative to join Bai Jinmu's team. He felt even more upset and regretted it so much that he wanted to slap himself a few times. However, it was useless to regret. Things had already come to this point. If he had the time to regret, he might as well think about how to deal with Zhang Liji. At this point, Lu Warong began to think carefully about how to answer this question. When Zhang Liji raised this question again, eldest senior brother LV Wenkong's face suddenly changed. His face, which was originally full of joy, turned pale at this moment, and his heart was in his throat again. LV Wenkong stared at Tang Jinan, waiting to see how he would answer this time. Although Tang Jinan's answer just now was a twist to smooth things over and prove that he didn't steal the blueprint, the first half of his answer still proved that he had the intention to steal it. As long as he had the intention, he might carry it out. Everyone would think of this possibility. LV Wenkong naturally knew how important Tang Jinan's answer was. He only hoped that Tang Jinan could give him a surprise like just now to prove his innocence. However, under such circumstances, LV Wenkong also knew very well how difficult it was to achieve that. It was almost impossible. Although LV Wenkong knew how Tang Jinan would answer, he still hoped that Tang Jinan would give him a surprise. Chapter 170. Everyone looked at Tang Jinan nervously. They wanted to hear how he would answer because his answer would also affect the others' answers. Although everyone had different thoughts, Tang Jinan was still the most uncomfortable one. Tang Jinan felt like his head was about to explode. He couldn't think of an answer that wouldn't anger his master or offend his eldest senior brother. This was simply too difficult. Tang Jinan wished that he could just lie down and faint so that he wouldn't answer this question. Unfortunately, this was just his imagination. He had to face this question now and answer Zhang Liji's question because Sun Xinjing was also staring at him. Sun Xinjing also knew that Tang Jinan was in a difficult position. However, he really wanted to know what the real situation was because Sun Xinjing also wanted to find that blueprint as soon as possible. That blueprint was too important. If he lost it just like that, Sun Xinjing would feel like dying. The consequences of this were very serious. Sun Xinjing wasn't afraid that his master would punish him after he lost the blueprint. Instead, he felt that he had let his master down. That blueprint had almost surpassed this era. Sun Xinjing felt relaxed and happy when he saw it. He almost couldn't believe that such a mechanism technique existed. His master had spent half his life researching this thing, but in the end, he had lost it. This blueprint wasn't like money. If it was lost, so be it. It wasn't a big deal. However, this blueprint was different. This blueprint represented the highest level of mechanism technique. His master had even prepared to treat it as the most precious treasure of the Sky Secrets sect and pass it down. Not only that, to be honest, Sun Xinjing had never thought of passing this blueprint down to the disciples. Of course, this wasn't because Sun Xinjing wanted to keep it a secret. It was because this blueprint was too important. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that this blueprint was related to the future of the Sky Secrets sect. This blueprint might be passed down to the successor of the next branch leader when Sun Xinjing resigned from his position. However, it definitely wouldn't be passed down to the other disciples. This was because the fewer people who knew about this secret, the better. If it was an ordinary blueprint, Sun Xinjing would have let everyone take a look at it, especially Boss LV Wenkong. If it was an ordinary blueprint, Sun Xinjing would have shown it to him long ago. However, this blueprint was too important. Facing this blueprint, Sun Xinjing had no choice but to be careful and keep this a secret. Once this blueprint was leaked out, all the secrets would disappear. Not only that, as long as someone with the intention to obtain the blueprint and study the contents of the blueprint, they would definitely be able to surpass the current technology of the Tianji sect in terms of technology. At that time, what would the Tianji sect do? Currently, the Tianji sect's mechanism technique was already very powerful in the Anwu country. It could be considered second to none. However, if someone who surpassed the Tianji sect's mechanism technique appeared, what would the Tianji sect do? Therefore, Sun Xinjing was very anxious to find that blueprint. Yi Xian was his most trusted disciple and also the successor he was preparing to appoint as the next branch leader. However, even so, Yi Xian was implicated in the matter of the blueprint. Sun Xinjing didn't hesitate to lock him up in the Repentance Pavilion. At this time, Sun Xinjing wouldn't show mercy to anyone who was implicated in this matter. He would use thunderous means to capture that person and use this as an excuse to search for the blueprint. However, Yi Xian had been locked up for so long, yet he still hadn't revealed the whereabouts of the blueprint. This made Sun Xinjing somewhat puzzled. Sun Xinjing naturally knew how terrifying the Repentance Pavilion was because he was the one who had ordered people to build it. After being locked up in the Repentance Pavilion for so long, Yi Xian still hadn't revealed the whereabouts of the blueprint. At this time, Sun Xinjing was really puzzled. He even suspected that Yi Xian had stolen the blueprint. However, even though he suspected that Yi Xian hadn't stolen the blueprint, there were no clues to prove that someone else had stolen the blueprint. This was because Yi Xian was indeed the only one who knew where the blueprint was kept. He had once led Yi Xian to the location where the blueprint was kept. At that time, Sun Xinjing thought that since Yi Xian was about to become the next branch leader's successor, Yi Xian would find out about this secret room sooner or later. It didn't matter if he led him there earlier. It was also because of this reason that Sun Xinjing led Yi Xian to the secret room. However, the blueprint was lost. The moment Sun Xinjing found out that the blueprint was lost, he was instantly furious. The first person he suspected was, of course, Yi Xian. This was because Yi Xian knew where the blueprint was kept. In addition, the other disciples didn't know where the blueprint was kept. Thus, the furious Sun Xinjing locked Yi Xian in the Repentance Pavilion and told him that he would only be released if he handed over the blueprint. Otherwise, he would have to stay there for the rest of his life. The reason why Sun Xinjing locked Yi Xian in the Repentance Pavilion was because he had given it a lot of consideration. If Yi Xian was really the person who stole the blueprint, then as long as Yi Xian was locked up in the Repentance Pavilion, the secret of the blueprint couldn't be leaked out. If Yi Xian didn't return the blueprint, Sun Xinjing was prepared to lock him up in the Repentance Pavilion forever and never let him out. This way, even if the blueprint couldn't be found, the secret wouldn't be known by outsiders. However, Zhang Leji said that there were other possibilities. It was possible that the blueprint was stolen by someone else. This made Sun Xinjing a little restless. He thought that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint. As long as Yi Xian was locked up, the secret naturally wouldn't be leaked out. However, if what Zhang Leji said was true, then it meant that the blueprint wasn't with Yi Xian. It was in the hands of someone else. This meant that the secret of the blueprint could be leaked out. This was a big matter. It was related to the future of the Tianji sect. Sun Xinjing had to be careful. That was why he gathered all his disciples together to see if there were any other possibilities. Therefore, at this gathering, everyone had to speak the truth. They had to say what they were thinking. Only then could they find the person who stole the blueprint. In order to find the person who stole the blueprint, Sun Xinjing was willing to do anything. Just now, when Tang Jianan didn't want to answer this question, Sun Xinjing was already very disgusted. It could be said that if Tang Jianan continued to refuse to answer, Sun Xinjing would definitely expel him from the sect without hesitation. However, even if Tang Jianan was expelled from the sect, Sun Xinjing would not let him leave the South County branch. Instead, he would lock him up in the Repentance Pavilion and never let him leave the South County branch to prevent the secret of the blueprint from being known by outsiders. Of course, after the blueprint was found, Sun Xinjing might consider letting Tang Jianan leave. Sun Xinjing knew very well that if the blueprint was not in Yi Xian's hands, he had to find it as soon as possible. This was because the later the blueprint was found, the more changes there would be, and the greater the possibility of it being leaked. Chapter 171. Sun Xinjing knew that the most important thing now was to find out who the real thief of the blueprint was and get the blueprint back. If the contents of that blueprint were to be leaked to the outside world, then Sun Xinjing would really have the heart to die. Sun Xinjing was anxious. He looked at Tang Jianan and saw that he was unwilling to answer. He was a little unhappy and his gaze turned cold. As Tang Jianan's master, Sun Xinjing naturally knew Tang Jianan's character very well. Usually, he was not competitive and was not decisive. He was just an ordinary person. It was normal for it to be difficult to make a decision when faced with a big matter. It was because of this reason that Sun Xinjing did not rush him. Because it was actually quite difficult for such a person to make a decision. The truth was as such. Tang Jianan's current behavior was even worse than before. Large drops of cold sweat flowed down from his forehead, along his cheeks and onto his clothes. Tang Jianan could only keep wiping his sweat, but the more he wiped, the more anxious he became, and the more cold sweat flowed down his body. This was not a simple answer. It was a matter of great importance. Most importantly, Tang Jianan also knew the consequences of each choice. If he said that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong wanted to steal the blueprint, not only would he be offending eldest senior brother, he would also be pushing eldest senior brother to Yi Xian's side. However, if he said that eldest senior brother LV Wenkong did not want to steal the blueprint, it would obviously be unreasonable. A person like eldest senior brother would not be indifferent to such a precious blueprint. If Tang Jianan really said that eldest senior brother did not want to steal the blueprint, it would be no different from lying through his teeth. It would be equivalent to lying to his master and treating him as a fool. No one wanted to be treated as a fool. Sun Xinjing naturally did not want to be treated as such. Tang Jianan knew this very well. He did not know how to answer. Logically speaking, he had three choices. First, eldest senior brother LV Wenkong secretly wanted to steal the blueprint. Second, eldest senior brother LV Wenkong did not want to steal the blueprint. Third, Tang Jianan did not answer. Tang Jianan had thought of these three choices before, but it was useless. Tang Jianan didn't want to answer the first question. As for the second choice, Tang Jianan wanted to say this, but he knew the consequences, so he couldn't answer. As for the third choice, Tang Jinan couldn't do it in front of his master. Therefore, although Tang Jinan seemed to have 3 choices, he actually only had 1 choice. At this point, Tang Jinan even thought of pretending to faint to deceive them. However, he only thought about it for a moment before dispelling this idea. Tang Jinan knew that if he dared to do so, he would definitely incur the wrath of his master. At that time, he would really be in trouble. Did he really have to choose the first option? Thinking of this, Tang Jinan subconsciously glanced at Bai Jianmu and saw that Bai Jianmu was also frowning and staring at him. Seeing Bai Jianmu's expression, Tang Jinan knew that Bai Jianmu also didn't know how to answer. If he knew, he would definitely help him out because the 2 of them were grasshoppers on the same rope. If he was unlucky, Bai Jianmu would definitely not have it easy. Seeing Tang Jinan hesitating, Bai Jianmu was also thinking hard. Lu Huarong lowered his head and didn't say anything. Zhang Liji knew that if it was someone else who asked this question, it would be easy to answer. They only needed to say their own thoughts. However, the 3 of them couldn't. If Tang Jinan dared to say that eldest senior brother LV Wenkang wanted to steal the blueprint, then Zhang Liji was sure that he would definitely offend eldest senior brother LV Wenkang. In that case, their group would have 1 less helper, and their side would have 1 more helper. If that was really the case, and they took the opportunity to rescue Yi Xian, then based on the number of people on their side, they would definitely be able to win against the other party. At that time, their side's strength would definitely surpass the other party's. On his side, there were LV Wenkang himself and Yi Xian, the 3 of them. The other party had Tang Jinan, Bai Jianmu, and Lu Huarong. Comparing the 2 sides, in terms of strength, it was obvious that his side was stronger than theirs. If the 2 sides continued to fight, the losing side would definitely be the other party. Zhang Liji really wanted to see that happen, because when that happened, all the problems would be solved. Although he still didn't know who stole the blueprint, he wouldn't be in danger anymore. As long as he was stronger than Bai Jianmu and the others, then he could slowly find the person who stole the blueprint. The biggest problem now was to protect himself. Zhang Liji knew that although he was the one who raised this question and asked whether senior brother LV Wenkang was suspected of stealing the blueprint, he couldn't offend senior brother LV Wenkang because he only raised a question. He didn't say that senior brother LV Wenkang would definitely steal the blueprint. Therefore, Zhang Liji was sure that senior brother LV Wenkang would never blame him no matter what the result was. On the other hand, Tang Jinan was different from him. When he raised this possibility, it already showed that it was just a possibility, just a hypothesis. Tang Jinan's answer had to be a definite answer, which was the most disadvantageous for him. It was impossible to not offend both sides. Through the master's anger just now, everyone present knew that it was impossible to maintain a neutral attitude at this time. Everyone's answer now could only be a definite answer. And Tang Jinan was facing such a situation. No matter how difficult it was to answer this question, no matter how much he didn't want to answer this question, he had to answer it and give it a definite answer. In the end, did eldest senior brother LV Wenkang want to steal the blueprint? This was a trap. Even if Tang Jinan knew it was a trap, he could only jump into it because he had no other choice. Looking at Tang Jinan, who was sweating profusely, Zhang Liji suddenly felt relieved. He knew that no matter how Tang Jinan answered at this moment, he would definitely not get any benefit. Because Zhang Liji also knew that Tang Jinan actually had no other choice. He only had one choice. What he was worried about now wasn't how difficult it was to answer this question, but his attitude. Tang Jinan only had one choice. If he chose to say that eldest senior brother LV Wenkang might have stolen the blueprint, then it would mean that he was betraying their group. Even if Bai Jianmu didn't blame him, he definitely wouldn't feel good in his heart. Because if he did that, the situation they were facing would be even worse. Zhang Liji turned his head and looked at Bai Jianmu. He saw that Bai Jianmu also had a heavy expression on his face. His eyes flickered incessantly. Upon seeing this scene, Zhang Liji understood that Bai Jianmu was also thinking bitterly, wanting to find the answer to this question to help him out of this predicament. Chapter 172. Although Bai Jianmu thought hard, things were not that simple. No matter how hard he thought, he could not think of a solution. Bai Jianmu naturally knew better than anyone what the consequences would be if Tang Jianan answered wrongly. Not only that, the consequences of this matter would make Bai Jianmu even more miserable than others. Not only would he not be able to stay in the Tianji sect, but even his family would probably be mocked by the people in his family. Bai Jianmu did not want to accept such an outcome, so he had to go all out. This problem seemed simple, but it was definitely not a simple matter to solve it well. Seeing that Tang Jianan was unwilling to answer, Zhang Liji decided to give him some time and pressure so that he could make a decision as soon as possible in case things changed. Thinking of this, Zhang Liji slowly walked in front of Tang Jianan and smiled softly. "Second senior brother, it's just a matter of a sentence. Is it that difficult?" When Tang Jianan heard this, he was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. He raised his head and looked at Zhang Liji. The resentment in his eyes even made Zhang Liji's heart turn cold. However, at this point, Zhang Liji also understood that everyone's positions were different. Although they did not make a move, it was actually more dangerous than that. It was because they liked mechanical techniques that they decided to join Sun Xinjing's tutelage and study the mechanical techniques that they liked. However, if this matter failed, it would be impossible for them to stay in the South County branch to continue studying mechanism skills in the future. Therefore, they could not retreat from this matter. They could only move forward. Thinking of this, Zhang Liji ignored Tang Jianan's resentful gaze and asked loudly again. "Second senior brother, quickly answer. Master can't wait any longer. Do you still want Master to urge you?" Tang Jianan looked at Zhang Liji and felt the anger in his heart grow stronger and stronger. It was all because of this guy in front of him that he had made a fool of himself. If it weren't for this guy, he wouldn't have ended up like this. Just as Tang Jianan was furious, Bai Jianmu saw Zhang Liji coming forward to ask him a question. He hurriedly took 2 steps forward and stood in front of Zhang Liji. He sneered and said, "Third senior brother, aren't you being a little too nosy? With Master here, is it your turn to speak? Second senior apprentice brother is our second senior apprentice brother. As a junior apprentice brother, how could you speak so rudely to your senior apprentice brother?" At this point, Bai Jianmu coldly snorted and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Although it was just a flash, this cold light gave Zhang Liji a fright and he subconsciously took a step back. Seeing Zhang Liji retreat, Bai Jianmu coldly snorted again. "Third senior brother, do you think you're already a branch leader? That's why you're speaking so rudely to second senior brother. However, let me give third senior brother a piece of advice. You're not a branch leader yet, and second senior brother is still your second senior brother. I hope you'll pay attention to your words. If you want to show off your might, wait until you become the branch leader. Now, third senior brother, if you dare to speak rudely to second senior brother again, don't blame me for teaching you a lesson on behalf of second senior brother." In the end, Bai Jianmu spat out the words through gritted teeth, showing his determination. That's right, Bai Jianmu was really going all out now. Just now, he wasn't warning Zhang Liji. Instead, he was telling these words to his master. If Zhang Liji really dared to say anything else, Bai Jianmu would definitely make a move. Bai Jianmu would definitely make use of this opportunity to severely injure Zhang Liji. Zhang Liji would be unconscious, but Bai Jianmu wanted him to be paralyzed. If Bai Jianmu made a move with his martial arts, no one present would be a match for him. Even if everyone here attacked together, they definitely wouldn't be a match for him. Bai Jianmu had this confidence. Bai Jianmu knew that if he used this reason to seriously injure Zhang Liji, his master wouldn't be able to do anything to him. At most, he would be reprimanded and locked up in the Repentance Pavilion. Although he might be locked up in the Repentance Pavilion, it was different from Yi Xian. Yi Xian was locked up because he stole the blueprint. If the blueprint couldn't be found, he would never be able to come out. Bai Jianmu was different. If he beat up third senior brother Zhang Liji, his master would lock him up in the Repentance Pavilion. Even if the punishment was heavy, even if he was locked up for 3 years, he would still have a chance to come out. Even if he was locked up, Zhang Liji wouldn't have the ability to reverse the situation for Yi Xian. At that time, even if Tang Jianan became the branch leader, it wouldn't matter. At most, he would deal with Tang Jianan after he came out. If it was just dealing with Tang Jianan, Bai Jianmu didn't feel any pressure. Tang Jianan was different from Yi Xian. If Tang Jianan could become the branch leader, he could only rely on his second senior brother's qualifications to be the branch leader. When he came out, he would definitely obediently give up the position of the branch leader. Bai Jianmu understood this point. Therefore, he was really ready to go all out now. Even if he was locked up in the Repentance Pavilion, he didn't care because he already had no way out. Seeing the trace of coldness in Bai Jianmu's eyes, Zhang Liji suddenly felt a chill in his heart. Only then did he remember that Bai Jianmu still had a strong martial arts. If he angered him, he would use his martial arts to deal with him. He really wouldn't be his opponent. Zhang Liji had seen Bai Jianmu's martial arts once. At that time, the 4 of them went out to the west region. On the way, they encountered a group of bandits. At that time, there were more than 20 bandits. All of them were strong and each of them had a weapon in their hands. When Zhang Liji saw more than 20 bandits, he was really scared out of his wits. He felt that his fellow disciples were finished this time. But he didn't expect that when everyone was about to be unable to resist, Bai Jianmu would make a move. When Bai Jianmu made his move, Zhang Liji only saw a figure flicker in front of him. Not long after, the strong and sturdy bandits were beaten to the ground by Bai Jianmu, wailing in pain. It was also at that time that Zhang Liji really knew that Bai Jianmu was a martial arts master. Moreover, he was a very strong martial arts master. Thinking of the situation that day, Zhang Liji knew that if Bai Jianmu made a move on him, he definitely wouldn't be able to withstand 3 moves. Zhang Liji took a few steps back and put some distance between him and Bai Jianmu before speaking. 5th junior brother, when did you see me speak rudely to 2nd senior brother? I just saw that master was a little impatient, so I reminded him. Speaking of this, Zhang Jianan's tone paused. He looked at Bai Jianmu vigilantly before speaking loudly. Junior brother Bai, what do you want to do? Don't forget that I'm your 3rd senior brother. Don't tell me you want to make a move on me? After hearing Zhang Liji's words, Bai Jianmu sneered. 3rd senior brother, how can I make a move on you? You're my 3rd senior brother. I just can't stand what happened just now. Chapter 173. Zhang Liji saw the cold gleam in Bai Jianmu's eyes when he answered. He knew that he couldn't provoke him now. Otherwise, this guy would definitely attack him, and he would be the unlucky one. Thinking of this, Zhang Liji turned to Tang Jianan and said, 2nd senior brother, please answer the question. Before Tang Jianan could answer, Bai Jianmu snorted and spoke first. 3rd senior brother, why are you in such a hurry? It's 2nd senior brother's business when he answers. Why are you in such a hurry? Speaking of this, Bai Jianmu's eyes suddenly lit up. He took a step forward and closed the distance between him and Zhang Liji. He said coldly, I understand now. 3rd senior brother, I think you're the one who stole the blueprint. Otherwise, why are you in such a hurry to drag eldest senior brother into this? As soon as Bai Jianmu finished speaking, Tang Jianan was overjoyed. His originally gloomy face was swept away at this moment. He also took a few steps forward and came to Bai Jianmu's side. He looked at Zhang Liji and asked loudly, "Third junior brother, I was wondering why you kept telling me to only think that eldest senior brother was the one who stole the blueprint. So that's why. Junior brother Bai is right. I think you're the one who stole the blueprint. Otherwise, why would you do that? Is it because you have a guilty conscience? In order to get rid of suspicion, you framed eldest senior brother as the one who stole the blueprint. I think you're the one who stole the blueprint, third junior brother." Zhang Liji's face turned pale when he heard their conversation. He didn't expect things to take a turn for the worse and turn out like this. He had asked Tang Jianan to answer the question, but at this moment, it turned out that he had a guilty conscience. Zhang Liji was so anxious that he couldn't think of a way to answer the two of them. At this moment, Lu Warong also hurriedly stepped forward and looked at Zhang Liji. "Third senior brother, logically speaking, I shouldn't say anything as your junior brother, but I really can't stand it anymore. Second senior brother and fifth senior brother are right. You only admitted that eldest senior brother was the one who stole the blueprint in order to cover up the fact that you stole it." Tang Jianan and Bai Jianmu's accusations were already difficult for Zhang Liji to deal with. Now, with Lu Warong's addition, Zhang Liji was even more tongue-tied and couldn't say anything. Although Zhang Liji couldn't answer them, he was thinking quickly about how to deal with this situation. The problem raised by Bai Jianmu was also a problem that was very likely to happen. He had already said that if Yi Xian was locked up, then he would have a chance to become the branch master. If he stole the drawing, framed Yi Xian, and then destroyed Bai Jianmu, it would be possible for him to succeed in his plan. And framing eldest senior brother for stealing the blueprints was the key to bringing down Bai Jianmu. It could be said that this question raised by Bai Jianmu not only resolved the problem that he had raised earlier, but it also turned the tables on him, admitting that he was the one who had stolen the blueprints. At this moment, Zhang Liji sensed the danger and cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He knew that he had no way out at this moment. Either Bai Jianmu and the others would fall, or he would be finished. In short, whichever side won would have the chance to stay in the South County branch. Now, it was no longer a simple matter of being the branch master of the South County branch. Instead, it was a matter of whether he could continue to stay in the South County branch. Zhang Liji had already understood that if he failed, he could only leave the South County branch. Other than that, there was no other choice. On the other hand, there was only one possibility for Bai Jianmu and the others. If they failed, they could only leave the South County branch. There was no other possibility. This was because no matter which side won, they would not leave their opponent in front of them to get in the way. Moreover, their opponent was like a hungry wolf that could counterattack at any time. Under such circumstances, they could only completely chase their opponent out of the South County branch to ensure their own safety. Needless to say what Bai Jianmu and the others were thinking, Zhang Liji also thought the same. This was because no one was willing to keep danger by their side. Zhang Liji wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and lowered his head to secretly look at his master. He saw that his master was also looking in his direction. However, the expression on his face became more and more solemn. It seemed that Bai Jianmu's words had also attracted his attention. The current Sun Xinjing was really a little anxious. What he was worried about was if Yi Xian was not the person who stole the blueprint. In other words, the blueprint might be in someone else's hands. If this blueprint were to be leaked to the outside world, then he, Sun Xinjing, would be the sinner of the Tianji sect. Therefore, Sun Xinjing had already made up his mind to not let go of any clues. As long as it was possible, he had to investigate until he found the blueprint. Now, Sun Xinjing had no other thoughts. For the sake of that blueprint, he did not care about any other method. As long as he could find that blueprint, nothing else mattered. Just now, seeing that Tang Jianan did not dare to answer Zhang Liji's question for a long time, Sun Xinjing was already a little annoyed. Sun Xinjing really didn't know if this question was so difficult to answer. As long as he answered yes or no, it would be fine. Was it really so difficult to answer? Or did Tang Jianan have other motives? However, what other motives could he have? Sun Xinjing really couldn't figure it out. Suddenly, Sun Xinjing's brows suddenly frowned. He thought of a possibility. Could it be that Tang Jianan stole the blueprints? That was the only explanation that could explain why he was so hesitant. However, it was not right. If the blueprint was stolen by Tang Jianan, he should have identified LV Wenkong as the person who stole the blueprint. LV Wenkong was suspected of stealing the blueprint. In this way, even if the blueprint was stolen by Tang Jianan, he would not be suspected. After figuring this out, Sun Xinjing's brows furrowed even tighter. He really couldn't figure out why Tang Jianan would find it so difficult to answer this question. Although Sun Xinjing didn't understand the reason, at this moment, he was sure of one thing. There must be something wrong. As for what the problem was, Sun Xinjing didn't know. After hearing Zhang Liji's question again, seeing that Tang Jianan still refused to answer, Sun Xinjing, who had been waiting impatiently for a long time, was about to urge him to answer. However, he suddenly heard Bai Jianmu's words. Bai Jianmu's words really caught Sun Xinjing's attention. Zhang Liji was the person who stole the blueprint. Therefore, he framed eldest senior brother LV Wenkong for stealing the blueprint so that he would not be suspected. This kind of thing was really possible. Sun Xinjing frowned and thought about it carefully. If Zhang Liji did this, Tang Jianan would accuse eldest senior brother as the person who stole the blueprint. Once he succeeded, then Zhang Liji would be cleared of suspicion. Not only would he be cleared of suspicion regarding the blueprint, but in the end, no one knew what method he would use to ostracize the other disciples. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.